We will call our meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Our first item is our land acknowledgement, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki and the district of Sipekne'katik, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. Next, we will have our moment of silent contemplation. Next, I would be looking for the approval of or amendments to the agenda. Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Musa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is carried. Next, I'm looking for the approval of the minutes of December 20th, 2023 regular meeting of council.
So moved. Second.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Mitchell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is carried. We will now move to correspondence for information. This has been before you for a while. You see it in front of you. Are there any particular items anyone wishes to draw to attention or has any questions on? Seeing none, we will move to correspondence for decision. The first item, we do have a memo regarding a change of location for volunteer awards. Who's taking this one? Alana?
Thank you, Madam Warden. From the original discussion in the fall of 2023, staff had proposed the Enfield Legion as the proposed location for the volunteer awards on April 19th, 2024. But we do have a booking conflict, so we are now proposing the Enfield Fire Hall as the location for the volunteer awards. And if council is in agreement, we have a recommended motion below indicating that.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'd like to move that the East Hants Municipal Volunteer Recognition and Firefighter Long Service Awards, previously scheduled for April 19th, 2024, to be held at the Enfield Fire Hall instead of at the Enfield Legion due to a booking conflict. I so move.
Seconded.
Seconded by the Deputy Warden. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question has been called. Someone has not voted. And the motion is passed unanimously. And I neglected to mention earlier, we do have regrets from Councillor Perry tonight. Okay, next we have an email from Brad Hodgkins, the Secretary, on behalf of the Arrowhead Park Road Association, requesting that the municipality waive the 5% administration fee. CAO?
Through you, Madam Warden, we did receive a letter from Mr. Hodgins saying that they had some unexpected costs this past year from the July flooding damage. This email is on the screen. As well, they noted that the municipality has purchased 3 of the PIDs associated with this road association, which they assumed they would lose those 3 charges from their charge area. What we've done in the past is we've actually had council pass a motion that we would, although the bylaw says council would be exempt from any charges, in order to be good neighbors to our folks around our engineered spring in Enfield, we've continued to pay that road charge fee. So I would assume that council would want to continue to pay those 3 annual fees to the road association. Possibly a discussion for budget time or a motion to be made this evening to confirm that or to to say that you won't be. And then the third issue is a waiving of the 5% municipal admin fee. I think you'd be hard pressed to waive one of the fees for one of the associations. I think where you haven't heard from all of the associations. But that could certainly be a conversation for budget time, noting that HRM doesn't charge administration fees for the work that they do for their private road associations. What I did post for council's information earlier was an email that I asked Jeff in our finance department to prepare. It gives council a sort of a overview of what it entails to maintain these private road association from a finance perspective. And then there's also work that's done on the planning side with mapping and actually managing the agreements that we have in place on that end. So your total cost that or the total revenue that you bring in from admin fees from these roads is about $15,000. So if you wanted to have a conversation around that, I would probably recommend that you move that discussion to your budget meetings, which start on January 30th this month. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Thank you. Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Actually, I was gonna, even without Brad's email, I was gonna try to push that through budget to remove that fee. So I'm gonna move a motion that the municipality continue to pay their maintenance fee for the Arrowhead Road, and move the discussion about the 5% fee to budget meeting.
Seconder.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Gordon Cole. Any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. Motion is passed unanimously. Okay, third item. A letter from Bruce Langell regarding the Special Hazard Municipal Response Funding. Currently, East Hants contributes 60% of the funding model, $7,405.01. A shift to 100% funding would be $12,341.68, an increase of $4,936.67, and would align with the other 20 municipal units contribution model. East Hants has an MOU with Shrew for services. Adam.
Good evening, Madam Warden. Tonight in Council's package, you see the letter from Shrew, the Special Hazardous Response Unit. At a staff level, we had concluded the signing of an MOU, which was previous council direction. Within the last month, we had completed it. And as part of those conversations, so the funding model right now is 52 cents based on a population count. And that funding goes to Shrew for their operations and so forth. And for the last, I think since council started contributing, council's always contributed 60% of what the 100% of the 52 cents per head population would be. And initially, just a little bit of context for those councillors that may not have been a part of the previous conversations. There's really 3 units that make up the Shrew for that area. There's the Colchester one, which is where that 60% kind of goes, and then there's one in New Glasgow and one in Amherst, but they really all function together as one unit, and they do support each other. So when we were signing the final funding agreements, we had that conversation that we were the only municipality out of the 21 other municipalities that only pays 60% of the 100% model. And they've brought forward a letter here, and I'll just note a couple more things for council. It is a very valuable service to the municipality. We actually used it during the floods in the summertime for the aquatic center to make sure it was safe prior to entering with all the chemicals in the building. And it really, for council's current contribution, is significant great value for the community, not only for the municipality, but for our residents. So it is in front of you tonight for discussion. A few things you could ask for a staff report on it. We could bring you some of the context. They do respond to all of East Hants. We have, knowing this was coming, we have included that 4,000 in your draft budget. So it is marked there. Council can have that conversation at budget time and remove it or or leave it in, but we thought we would bring it forward. And I think just one other piece to add, quite a few years ago when council made the decision to contribute that 60%, we were looking at their financials and just kind of getting that information. And Shrew has been providing us their financials consistently for numerous years. And when you do a quick review of them, they're attached to the agenda tonight. You know, it does show they have some funding in the bank, but I guess the key piece is those are high, their assets are high costs, and any sort of response uses a lot of supplies. And although it may look like there's some funding there, it really isn't from a day-to-day operations. You know, one piece of equipment would eat up the funding that they have. So I would just leave council with that it is such a valuable service that you're receiving for your $7,000 contribution, and to move it to that $12,000 to align with the rest of municipalities would be a good thing for council to consider. Pending any questions or requests for a staff report, we'll leave it with council to decide.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor Rhino. I'm trying.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Well, for me, I read a staff report. I understand that this is put in the draft budget, and we could have that report at that time and discuss it at that time. So often I hear around this council chamber, oh, other municipalities are doing this, and other municipalities. You know, I'm not debating. I've seen the good work that these people do. But just because somebody else is doing something don't really mean we have to until we thoroughly look at this. And I would rather see a report at budget time and that be part of the budget discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I look at it a little differently. I've been on some of these calls they've been on. I'm prepared to move a motion to make the funding 100% for the model.
Seconded? Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question's been called. And the motion is passed by a vote 9 in favor, 1 against, with Councillor Rhino voting nay. So that concludes correspondence for decision. We are not yet at the hour for the public hearing, so we will move to our committee reports. Corporate and Residential Services, Councillor Perry is not here. I believe that Councillor Tingley, you're the Vice Chair of Corporate and Residential Services, so we'll.
Okay, the committee held its regular meeting on January 16, 2024 in council chambers. The following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. Sustainable Services Growth Fund revision to use of funding. The municipality of East Hants received a letter from the Nova Scotia Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing dated March 31st, 2023, indicating the province of Nova Scotia approved a grant of $1,123,778 to support infrastructure investment under the new Sustainable Service Growth Fund. Council approved a list of projects to apply these funds to at the July 26, 2023 council meeting. The list included $821,910 for the Industrial Park lift station. Due to expected delays at the Industrial Park lift station, staff are recommending the allocation of these funds to be changed to the Medical Center lift station. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends that council approve a change to the allocation of $821,910 funding from the Industrial Park lift station to Medical lift station. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Musa. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question has been called. Missing a vote, folks. Yeah, we're still missing a vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Counselor Tingley.
Next item, 2024-2025 draft budget preliminary information. The Director of Finance presented the report titled Preliminary Information 2024-25 Budget, the Municipality of East Hants Assessments Report, and overall increase in cap taxable assessments, net exemption of 11.66%, and reviewed the increase in costs of education, policing, insurance, and other assumptions. The budget review will continue at a future meeting. Next item, Business Technical Assistance Program. The Director of Corporate Services presented the report titled Business Technical Assistance Program dated January 3rd, 2024. The 2023-2024 operating budget includes $10,000 to pilot a new service focused on providing entrepreneurs of East Hants access to professional consulting services to help with business planning, operations, and growth. Staff provided an overview of the new services before staff start implementation. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that Council approves the Business Technical Assistance Program pilot service. As Chair of the committee, I so move.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question has been called. And the motion is passed with 9 in favor, 1 against, with Councillor Rhino voting nay. Back to you, Councillor Tingley.
Next item, 2024-2025 draft budget, East Hants Arena Association Sportsplex. The manager of the East Hants Sportsplex, Scott Forward, presented the report titled 2024-2025 Budget Presentation dated January 9th, 2024. The report reviewed the budget for the Sportsplex. The current budget is tracking within $5,000 year to date. Next item is D-Transfer Tax Report. The Director of Finance and Chief Administrating Officer presented a report titled D-Transfer Tax, dated January 11, 2024. A copy of the report was attached to the agenda and available to all the committee members. Staff prepared the report in response to Council Motion C23 in brackets 38. Move that Council direct staff at a time staff have an opportunity before the next budget to bring a report to begin discussions how the D-Transfer tax should be allocated. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that Council direct staff to prepare a draft policy on D-Transfer taxes and draft policy on annual grant to urban tax rate. These draft policies are to be based on recommendations of the staff report dated January 11th, 2024. And once the draft 2024-2025 budget is tabled with Executive Committee, staff bring a report on D-Transfer tax options to alter the budget based on information in this report. As Chair of the committee, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question has been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Councillor Tingley.
Next item was resulted in-camera land issue, Charles Drive. The following public motion came from the in-camera land issues discussion. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that Council authorizes the CAO to enter into discussions with Uniac and District Volunteer Fire Department with the intent to subdivide and declare surplus a portion of municipal property on Charles Drive, Mount Uniac, PIDs 415-0018, 4519-4644, 4519-4669, and 453-44165 for a price not to exceed $1. As chair of this committee, I so move.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Musa. Any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Counselor.
As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion is carried. That brings us to Planning Advisory Committee report. Over to you, Counselor Mitchell.
Madam Warden, the first two items on my report deal with the public hearing. So my suggestion would be that we do the ratification of the Rogers Cell Tower lease, and that'll give us time probably to get close to the public hearing time. Or do you want me to continue as is?
Just let me have a look at the report.
I could start at item number 3.
Just start with number 3 would be the easiest
Okay.
thing.
Planning Advisory Committee report. The committee held its regular meeting on January 16, 2024 in council chambers. The following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. Policy PL 23-012, Tammy and John Ferguson, Development Agreement Application, Initial Report. Tammy and Joe Ferguson have submitted an application to operate an educational services use, which is being considered through a development agreement application. Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council give initial consideration to enter into a development agreement for an educational service use on properties identified as PID 451-23122 and 451-23114, and authorize staff to schedule a public hearing. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by Counselor Hebb. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question?
The question has been called. Somebody hasn't voted, folks. And the motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Counselor Mitchell.
Second access report. Planning staff have responded to council motion C23-237 and prepared a report identifying areas in East Hants that have only serviced by one access in or out of the area. There are approximately 17 areas in East Hants that meet this criteria. Staff have further identified if there is a reasonable possibility of creating a second access for these developments. Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council authorize staff to take the secondary access report dated December 20, 2023 to EMO Planning Committee for prioritization of communities for the Fire Smart Assessment, and that council authorize staff to review planning and subdivision regulation to aid in the implementation of Fire Smart principles. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by Counselor Musa. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question?
Question has been called. And the motion is passed unanimously.
That leaves two items, Madam Chair, for the public hearing.
Well, those will be dealt with in the public hearing, so I think you could move the adoption of the rest of the report.
As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report presented.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is carried.
Madam Chair, what's the procedure for the other two items?
We'll be going into the public hearing at 7:30.
And after that, I'll finish the report, or?
There's nothing left on the
Okay.
report. It'll be dealt with at the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is the ratification of the Rogers Cell Tower lease. What have we got? 4 minutes, folks? Let's Adam.
Good evening, Warden. So in front of you tonight is your ratification for the Rogers lease. that you spoke about at the October 17th, 2023 regular meeting of council, policy and camera. And you directed staff to work with Rogers to negotiate a new lease. And based on council's direction, we were able to meet the intent of the conversation with council, and we're bringing it forward for you to ratify. So the motion is on the table for one of the council members to move.
Counselor Tingley.
I'll move that council ratify the in-camera direction given to staff at October 17th, 2023 regular meeting of council, policy, and in-camera to enter into a 5-year lease agreement with Rogers Communication, Inc., with 2 additional 5-year mutual renewal terms for the telecommunications site at 309 Park Road, Elmsdale, PID 453-94376.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by the deputy warden. Is there any discussion on the motion? Question has been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Well, we are very close to the hour of the public hearing, folks, so we'll allow staff to take their places and get ready for that. We will wait till the hour of 7:30 to start the hearing, as that is the advertised time of the hearing. Okay, it is now the hour of 7:30. Councilors, this evening we have 3 items on the public hearing agenda. The purpose of this hearing is for council to hear input from the public prior to making a decision on the proposals. To the members of the public who have chosen to participate this evening, welcome. Please note that council's procedural policy requires that you not cheer, boo, clap, or otherwise disrupt this hearing. Everyone who wishes will have an opportunity to be heard. Tonight, council may approve, reject, or defer its decision to a later date. Council approval is required for the proposals to proceed. I will now ask the municipal clerk to outline when the public hearing advertisements were published. CAO?
Madam Warden, for the first item, a public hearing notice appeared in the January 10th, 2024 and January 17th, 2024 editions of the Chronicle Herald. The notices described council's intent to consider disposal of surplus municipal property to E.H. Horn School Preservation Society. It gave the date and time of the public hearing and provided the location and estimated value of the property. For the second and third items, a public hearing notice appeared in January 10th and 17th, 2024 editions of the Chronicle Herald. The notices described the proposals, gave the date and time of the public hearing, and indicated that staff reports were available to the public.
Okay, councilors, the first public hearing this evening is for a proposal to dispose of surplus municipal property situated at 248 Highway 2 Enfield to a nonprofit society, the E.H. Horn School Preservation Society. I would now ask the Vice Chair of the Corporate and Residential Services Committee to present the committee's report. Counselor Tingley?
Sorry. Just bear with me.
Adam?
Madam Chair, if I may jump in ahead of Councillor Tingley. The script may reference the committee. This conversation did go through council, so we do have a recommendation within the report at the council level that pending the public hearing that the vice chair could read that recommendation or any member of council because it was dealt at the council level, not the committee level.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Tingley?
So I'll move the motion.
No, there is a script. Does Counselor,
I don't have
Counselor
a copy
Perry
of it.
is the Chair of Corporate Residential Services, and he's not with us today. So Counselor Tingley, as Vice Chair,
So weird was.
is carrying out the duties.
The Corporate and Residential Services Committee has considered the disposal of surplus municipal property on behalf of Municipal Council. The committee has reviewed staff's report, completed their evaluations, and will make a recommendation to council during this hearing. Madam Warden, through you, I would ask staff to present their final report on disposal of surplus municipal property.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Warden. So tonight you have your consideration of surplus disposal for 248 Highway 2 Enfield, which is commonly known as the E.H. Horn School, which is currently operated under lease agreement with by the E.H. Horn Preservation Society. And just a little bit of context and background for council and for the public. As part of council's lease renewal in 2021 to 24, council had done that lease with no further extensions, with the assumption that hopefully the society would take over ownership. So this past springtime, a year in advance of the lease renewal or the lease coming to expire, council had a conversation and they declared it surplus to municipal needs and offered the society first option to purchase the property. So the society reviewed that request by council, and in July they agreed to proceed with discussions to purchase the subject property. And then in September, council authorized the CAO to execute a new easement over the Covenant Road. The old easement, I think, was from the 70s. We do have a water tower in the back, and I'll highlight that on the map in a moment or two. So the easement there, and also to authorize the CAO to enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with the society. And one of the terms of the agreement of purchase and sale is a successful public hearing, which is the stage you're at tonight, because council is selling it to the society for $1, which is under market value, which is a requirement in the Municipal Government Act that if you're below that value, you have to hold a public hearing. So that is the intent of tonight. And then in September, the society was presented with an agreement of purchase and sale. And it was executed. And tonight is the last step in the process. Just a note for council, the closing of the property is scheduled to coincide, to close on March 28th, 2022, and that does coincide with the end of the lease, and all of the lease agreements would terminate at that time as well. The society did complete their due diligence in early January, and the agreement, as I mentioned earlier, is pending a successful public hearing. Council is selling it on an as-is, where-is condition. We do have a warranty deed that it should be used for community purposes only, and should the society decide to sell the subject property, that they will reconvey it to East Hants for $1. So you have your right of first refusal should the society change down the road. I think I've pretty much provided the background around the Municipal Government Act and the purpose of complying with the Government Act in the public hearing tonight. The municipal clerk spoke to the advertisements in the newspaper and the Chronicle Herald to meet the Government Act requirements. And just a quick snapshot of the property. It's 1.56 acres located on Highway 2. It's outlined in red here. And I mentioned earlier the water tower. So the municipality has a water tower back here where my cursor is on the screen. And so that easement brings us to have municipal access back here to meet our needs. Just scrolling through, there's just some additional land information in there. And there are a few pictures of the society of the property here in front of you. And just a conclusion on this subject tonight for council. Council has complied with the Municipal Government Act and your council policies for the disposal of municipal property to a not-for-profit organization. And the recommended motion post the public hearing is on the screen should council consider to move it to the last step there. So thank you, Madam Warden.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor Tingley, as vice chair, would you like to move the recommended? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself, folks. Does any member of council have questions for staff? Councillor Mitchell, my apologies.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you to staff. Between now and the end of March, are there anything that we're responsible for in repairs or lot, snow removal, et cetera, et cetera?
Through you, Madam Warden, we do have our current lease with the society, which essentially they take care of majority of the operations. I mean, we have the kind of the shell of the building, but the day-to-day is all under their umbrella. We do, should something arise, we would have that conversation at the staff level with the society. But the lease is still in effect until the end, yeah.
So we're not really on the hook for anything, per se?
Well, day-to-day, we still do have a lease until the property closes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other councillors have any questions for staff?
Sorry, Madam Warden, if I may just add, the agreement and purchase and sale will be finalized as in an as-is, where-is position as of the successful public hearing. But it doesn't, what I should say is it doesn't mean, should something arise, we wouldn't work with the society until the end of the lease, but we are finalizing the sale based on the as-is, where-is condition.
Okay. Any further questions?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Adam.
I just had a cue from the CAO there. Council has committed to repairing, there is a sewer line there that we will be completing in springtime. So that is part of the agreements and purchases and sale. So just to echo that, we have made that commitment. There's about a 10-feet section. It's not imminent, but we will be repairing that. Council will be repairing that.
Councillor Rhino.
I just wanted to point that out, thank you for letting me speak, that it's as is, where is, after that pipe has been fixed, correct?
Through you, Madam Warden, the pipe will be fixed in springtime, so the property will have closed by then.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is kind of an agreement we have made as part of the sale. But if we don't fix it, until the ground dries and we can get equipment out there, and let's say it's late May and something else goes on, the property is not in our hands at that time.
No, but if we do not get that pipe fixed by the time this runs out, the motion you should be saying as is, where is, pending that pipe fixture being fixed. Because the way it sounds right now, it's as is, where is now, without that being done. So I just wanted to make clarification on that.
Thank you.
Okay. I will now open the floor for comments and questions. If you are viewing the YouTube live stream, you may use the YouTube chat feature, which is being monitored. First, does anyone attending in person have any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Hal Hilton. I'm the chair of the E.H. Horn School Preservation Society. We are a not-for-profit society and a registered charity created in the year 2000 by interested community members after the E.H. Horn School building closed as a public school. Our mandate is to create and maintain a sustainable and safe space for the community, and we have been leasing the building from the municipality since the year 2000. Our volunteer board oversees the building operation, upkeep, repairs, leases, and seeks other funding avenues to ensure the building is a viable entity. As a board member, your volunteer time would give you an opportunity to take part in the community aspect of the old school, give advice, and interact with other members other board members, and tenants. Our mandate is to retain the building and its historic significance to the community by renting space to community organizations and businesses. Our current tenants include Enfield Heritage Center, RSI Dance Works, the East Hants Child Care Center, and a room that is used for tutoring. The room is provided at no charge to a retired teacher to tutor reading and other subjects as required. We use the rents, donations, and other funds for improvements and ongoing repairs. We also have an annual bursary for graduating high school students. These bursaries assist eligible students in furthering their education and have been issued every year since the fund was set up. The bursary fund established by the board is funded through charitable donations. In 2019, we applied and was granted municipal heritage status for the building. Board of Directors meetings are held monthly to deal with the ongoing operation of the building. Effective April 1st, 2024, the building will be declared surplus by the municipality, and as a result, we have entered into an agreement of purchase and sale with the municipality of East Hants to acquire the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member of the public have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I would ask Julianne if there's any member of the public with questions or comments through the live chat on the YouTube live stream. There are none. Does any member of staff have any final comments? I would now ask the Vice Chair of the Corporate and Residential Services Committee to present his committee's recommendation. Councillor Tangley.
I'll move that council authorize the CAO to proceed with the sale of 2848 Highway 2, Enfield, PID number 451-47766, to E.H. Horn School Preservation Society for $1 with right of first refusal and buyback covenants in favor of East Hants.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Any final comments or questions?
Question.
The question has been called. And the motion is passed unanimously. Okay, councillors, the second public hearing this evening is for a proposal to redesignate and rezone property on the corner of Old Enfield Road and Bakery Lane to allow for the development of multiple unit residential R3 zone uses. I would now ask the Chair of the Planning Advisory Committee to present his report. Councillor Mitchell.
Planning Advisory Committee has considered the proposal on behalf of Municipal Council. The committee has reviewed staff's reports, completed their evaluation, and will make a recommendation to council during this hearing. Madam Warden, through you, I would now ask staff to present their final report on the proposal.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So the applicant is ELT Property Holdings Limited. The location of the property is 51 Old Enfield Road in Enfield on the corner of Bakery Lane and Old Enfield Road. The size of the property is 1.13 hectares. And the proposal is to amend the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw by changing the generalized future land use designation from Village Core, VC, to Medium Density Residential Neighborhood, MR, and to rezone the same from Village Core, VC, to Multiple Unit Residential, R3. And here we have a zoning map, which shows the subject property currently zoned Village Core. It's outlined here in red, and there's two properties as part of the application. To the north, we have R2 zoned land, which allows for single and 2-unit dwellings. To the east, we have R1 zoned land, which allows for single-unit dwellings. To the south, we have Village Core zoned land, which allows for a variety of uses, including commercial and residential uses. And across the street, we have the Enfield Legion. The purpose of this application is to allow for the development of 3 24-unit multiplexes. The property owner currently has site plan approval on the subject lands that allow for 72 dwelling units, and the current application is also for 72 dwelling units. If the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw mapping amendment application is approved, the applicant does not have to develop the site as shown on the concept plan because it is mapping amendments. However, the applicant would be restricted by the size and frontage requirements of the land use bylaw and by the requirements of the land itself. The applicant would also have to be compliant with other land use bylaw regulations, such as amenity space requirements, buffering, design requirements, parking requirements, including bicycle parking requirements. So here's the proposed concept plan for the mapping amendments. So the developer has shown that the property can be subdivided into 3 different properties with 1 24-unit apartment building on each property. The application shows that from the one that was presented at the public information meeting, that the driveway has been pushed farther north on Bakerley Lane, and that was because Nova Scotia Public Works had requested it be moved away from the intersection. The application also shows, the concept plan also shows above ground and below ground parking and some buffering around the property. So as I mentioned, there is an approved site plan on the property for 72 dwelling units. This is the current site plan on the property. And with this development, there would be 6 different properties and 6 different buildings, and most of the parking would be located above ground. And this is just the elevation drawings as part of the site plan approval process. The subject property, this is 51 Old Enfield Road. This is looking north from the subject property along Old Enfield Road. This is looking south, and then we have the Legion across the street. This is a satellite image from Google showing the subject properties, and as again, they're both outlined here in red. We have Old Enfield Road, Bakery Lane, Shamrock Lane, and the Legion is across the street. There is a sidewalk that goes up to the Legion property and goes to Highway 2, but it stops right at the edge of the Legion property. And there's a fire hydrant that's in the front of the property somewhere along here. So these are the proposed amendment maps. So they have the first one here, which is the general future land use map, and that's changing the designation to medium density residential neighborhood, MR. And the second one is the proposed land use bylaw map amendment, which changes the property to multiple unit residential zone. Staff have received comments from both internal departments and external agencies. Policy IM11 of the Municipal Planning Strategy is a policy that permits council to consider the proposed mapping amendments. East Hants Council has to determine if the proposed application is in the best interest of the municipality. And that policy states that it permits council to consider private applications to amend the municipal planning strategy where the proposed amendments are in the best interest of the municipality. So I'm just going to provide some comments from our reviewing agencies. The first one's from Nova Scotia Public Works. They have commented that a negative impact to the provincial road network is not anticipated. However, the applicant will have to shift the driveway location and have already indicated that they have done that on the concept plan, and so that has been completed. Nova Scotia Public Works has provided also the approval for the site plan, so both of those do have approval from Nova Scotia Public Works. Our own internal Department of Infrastructure and Operations, so in addition to their standard comments around servicing, Infrastructure and Operations has indicated that the proposal may require upgrades to the existing sanitary sewer infrastructure and that a stormwater management plan will be required at the site plan approval stage. RCMP, they've provided comments as well. The RCMP has commented that the additional automobiles that 72 dwelling units would bring to a densely populated area pose the typical issue of traffic. This is in an already heavily trafficked area. This in itself poses safety concerns, but is easily mitigated with appropriate signage, signed traffic control, and of course, enforcement. Staff have provided the comments to Nova Scotia Public Works for their consideration, and Nova Scotia Public Works has not raised any concerns regarding the increased traffic. The RCMP also noted that there is no sidewalk in the area of the municipality for pedestrian traffic. There is a sidewalk along Old Enfield Road, as I mentioned, connecting the Legion to Highway 2, but it's on the opposite side of the street as the application site. However, if in the future council wanted to consider a sidewalk on the other side of the street, that the local improvement bylaw could be used as a tool for getting the sidewalk constructed. Comments also stated that with the increase of population, there's a presumed increase of police calls for service that are more typical of denser populations, noise complaints, damaged property, etc. The Schenectady Central Regional Center for Education's commented, and they have indicated that they will use the information provided to them by staff for their planning purposes. And further to the comments, planning staff are meeting with staff from the Center of Education to discuss growth in the corridor in early 2024. Enfield Volunteer Fire Department, they have provided comments, and in response, all buildings will have to adhere to Nova Scotia Building Code requirements, including items related to fire safety, such as building construction, distance to fire hydrants, and there is actually a fire hydrant existing along the frontage, and other items. Fiscal impact analysis. So our staff has completed a fiscal impact analysis of the proposed development. And based on what is proposed, we assumed, based on the value of similar buildings in Enfield, that the buildings would be assessed at approximately $3 million per building for a total of $9 million in assessment for the development site. Based on these assumptions, the total potential tax revenue for the site could be $107,550 minus the cost of providing services to the proposed development per year of $54,891, which would equal a potential financial benefit to the municipality of $54,659. The Enfield Volunteer Fire Department could receive an extra $12,600 a year from the proposed development. Citizen engagement. An advertisement outlining the application and indicating that it had been received and was under review by staff was placed in the Chronicle Herald. A public information meeting for the application was held on September 5th of 2023, and notes from the meeting have been included in the staff report. There was a wide range of viewpoints from public members who attended the public information meeting. A questionnaire was mailed to property owners and residents within 300 meters of the subject property, and questionnaire results have been provided to councillors for their information. And there were 204 letters mailed and 27 responses received. There was a mix of both positive and negative questionnaires received. Some of the comments received from neighboring residents include increased traffic congestion from the proposed development, so that was the main concern from the questionnaires. Increased demand for water and wastewater services, concerns over the proposed height of the buildings, concerns regarding shadows and neighboring properties, concerns about a transient population, issues with the style of development not fitting into the neighborhood, worried about the impact of noise, concerns regarding stormwater runoff, better design than the as-of-right development, would like to see more shopping and soft services in the future, and good idea, more housing is needed. In regards to traffic congestion, Nova Scotia Public Works owns and maintains both the Old Enfield Road and Bakery Lane. As the traffic authority for these two roads, they've indicated that they do not anticipate a negative impact to the road network, and no new roads are being proposed as part of the development. Capacity for water and wastewater services will be determined at the site plan approval stage of the application if the mapping amendments are approved. It should be noted, however, that the applicant has already been allocated capacity for their existing site plan approval, which is also 72 dwelling units, so that's already been allocated. Under the R3 zone, the maximum height of a building can be is 11 meters from the established grade, and on average each story is approximately 3 meters. Because the application is for a mapping amendment, the location of the buildings shown on the concept plan are subject to change. The minimum setback requirements for the R3 zone are 10 meters from the rear property line for a large multiplex and 10 meters from the side yard and front yard property lines. It is also important to note that a home in the R1 zone has a maximum height of the lesser of 2.5 stories or 11 meters and may be located 1.8 meters from the side yard and 10 meters from the rear yard. So it has the same height, could have the same height as a single family home, and it has the same setback house of 11 meters as the large multiplex in the R3 zone. And just for some context over height, because I know it's hard to visualize, the homes on Sam Crescent, some of the taller ones there, are just over 10 meters tall. Therefore, if the subject property was to be developed as an R1 property, the new homes could have the same or greater shadow reach than the proposed 3-story apartment buildings. And we have provided shadow studies for councillors, and we took the shortest day of the year and the longest day of the year, and based on the site plan, and did the shadow. So on June 21st, which is the longest day of the year at 7 a.m., this is the shadows. on June 21st at 6:30 in the evening for the longest day of the year. The shadows at 6:30 start approaching the rear of the homes. On December 21st, the shortest day of the year, at 9:15 a.m. These are the shadows here, and then on December 21st at 3 p.m. At that point in time, they're reaching the back of the houses. I will note that the lot is currently treed, and some of those trees are mature, and they are probably taller than the 11 meters within that 10-meter setback. The proposed multiplex buildings could be created as rental units or condo units. Concerns about noise may be addressed through the enforcement of the Community Standards Bylaw. As part of the site plan approval process in the R3 zone, developers are required to complete a stormwater management plan, so stormwater will have to comply with our municipal standards. As well, a lot grading and drainage plan will be required for each lot, and the grading plan shall be completed as per our lot grading and drainage bylaw. We've heard when the advertisements were placed, and they were also put on our social media and on our website, and a letter indicating the date and time of the public hearing was mailed to residents within 300 meters of the subject lands. In conclusion, both the Village Core Zone and the R3 zone permit 72 dwelling units. The Village Core Zone is comprised of smaller lots with smaller buildings on each lot. The R3 zone permits larger lots with larger buildings, although small multiplexes could still be constructed in the R3 zone. The height in each zone can be 3 stories. Enabling a large building footprint allows for parking to be located underground in the R3 zone, allowing for more green and landscaped areas. The buildings in the Village Core Zone are smaller, and therefore parking is likely to be located above ground, creating more hard surface area and less options for landscaping. Both zones are required to provide buffering. It is more economical for 3 larger buildings to be constructed than 6 smaller buildings, which is one of the reasons why the applicant has applied for the proposed amendments. The application complies with the municipal planning strategy policies, and staff recommend approval. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Thank you, Debbie. Does any member of council have questions for staff at this time? Councillor Garden-Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just need some clarification. When you talk about 11 meters max and underground parking, so let's say the new apartment building down from across from the RCMP station, it's 3 stories, and the underground parking is the way it's graded. It's just 3 stories flush from the ground up, right? But then you get an apartment further up, say in by the Magnolia, where the underground parking is almost fully exposed. Makes it appear like it's 4 stories, right?
Through you, Madam Warden, the regulation state is from the established grade, and I haven't driven by the site down that's being currently under constructed where it appears that the parking is above ground, so I can't comment specifically on that one. But
I'm just wondering if the 11 meters is measured from the bottom floor of the,
it's measured from the established grade, and we have a definition for our established grade, so they take basically the lowest point of the property and the highest point of the property and go in the middle, and that's the established grade.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Debbie, can you please show the already approved site plan? Okay, so with the already approved site plan, there will be no tree left on the lot. Every inch of the lot it will be building or parking or be used, right?
Through Madam Warden, the majority of the lot would be used for parking or buildings, and there will be some landscaping around the buildings themselves. And the site plan has a 1.8 meter opaque fence that goes around it.
Just 1.8 meters. That was my second question. So the tree is already there. They're already, you said, higher than the 11 meters, not the 1.8 meter, right?
Looking at for a mature trees are usually higher than 11 meters tall, yes.
Okay, and I think I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, from the first meeting when we had this approved, I think 1 or 2 resident on the Shamrock Lane was concerned about the garbage being next to his property and the road in from from the garbage container at the back of the property. That was one of the concerns, right? I don't know if you remember or if you can point the concern from the first one.
Is that correct, John? Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for now.
Does any other counselor have any questions for staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, I would now ask if the applicant has any comments or would like to make a presentation.
That work. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Our procedure requires you to tell us your name and address.
That's coming next. My name is Lino Ribahi. I'm the owner of this project. Me and my wife, we own this project here. And when we purchased it under the current zoning, we knew that this property was designed for density unit, and we're allowed, and we have done our homework, and through land use bylaws, we realized that we can do up to 72 unit, and we did get approved for that. The difference between the new plan we propose compared to the previous plan we're approved for is, as you can see, we have a lot of green areas that buffer between us and the neighbors. And to me and to the neighborhood, I think that's a big catch. Some people have concern over the height. The current zoning with the core village, you are allowed to go up to 3 stories, incorporate by the roof. So the height was still the same. The difference we're asking is, instead having 6 small buildings attached, every 2 will be attached together. We're asking for 3 buildings instead. The other difference is, as you can see, the parking, right? If you go to, Debbie, can you please show us the previous plan? The previous plan, you can see the massive parking in the back. And as of right, we're already allowed to do this. And we are approved for this. But with the new plan, if you notice, that will be a lot of green area and a lot of buffer between us and the neighbor. And as Debbie showed too, that the building, the shade of the building wouldn't affect much of the neighbors. I personally think this is a much better approach, especially that I will say more than half the parking will be underground. So that will save a lot of headache in future, and in the future for snow plowing, for accessibility for tenant or potential owners of this, because that could be a condo too instead of a rentals. The garbage is a big thing, right? There's not going to be any garbage outside. All these buildings, they'll have their garbage room underground. Really, if you go back and forth between the two pictures, right, it's really showing the different and the more. I don't know, it's prettier, I think. I got a taste for that, so this is what I have to say, and thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Lino. I will now open the floor for comments and questions, and if you are viewing on the YouTube live stream, you may use the YouTube chat feature, which is being monitored. First, does anyone attending in person have any questions or comments? And as you come to the mic, go ahead. I would ask you to state your name and address for the record, please.
That's a little slow. Yes, my name is Dennis Clark, and my property is directly beside, right there, the old plan there. This one there. Can we zoom in on that a little bit? First of all, I want to let everybody know I'm in favor of the rezoning, and I'll explain why. Now, this one here, you can see, if you go right where your cursor is there, basically that's my property line. And all along my property, going right to the backyard, I'm going to, this already approved design has a walkway, the whole length of my property, and 5 sets of double doors. Now, that'll probably be illuminated, there'll be snow removal, And my whole length of the property, which is 190 feet, I got a set of windows along my whole property. I can't see anybody seeing that overly desirable. And not only that, like Lino just mentioned, the garbage is outside, and that's a concern for everybody. We know what rodents are like, and even our green bins, and how rats could chew through them fairly easily. So the new proposal, this is already approved, so something's going there. The new one, if we allow the change in the bylaw, or the zoning, I should say, you take a look at that now. For me, I know I'm just speaking for me here, but now there's no double doors facing my property. There's no walkway. All of these are facing the center, which to me is a huge improvement. So now I got 7 meters, 21 feet, whatever, give or take, from my property line to the actual building. A huge improvement. The garbage are inside. And if anybody's ever been to any high rises, it's in the landlord's best, interest to make sure that the garbage is well looked after, clean, tidy. There's no problems with rodents. So that's another big improvement there. And anyway, this here, the other one's already improved. If it was up to me, I'd rather see one-level seniors complexes, but that's not going to happen, obviously. Anyway, I'm just in favor of the change of the bylaw to allow this. This is my opinion. For me personally, this would mean no walkway, no sets of double doors, probably not lit up so much, maybe the snow removal, whatever else, and the rodents and stuff, garbage inside. It's, even now I see the access to this has been put a little further from the intersection, which is another positive thing to me. Anyway, I also realize the corridors is where all communities grow, and this is a main artery here. And anyway, so I got to be realistic. This is where things happen. The country is probably the fastest growing country in all the G7, and this is going to happen to any community that's going to grow and develop. Anyway, I'm glad we had the opportunity to work together and voice our opinions. And anyway, I much prefer this design. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other member of the public, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Marie McKean. I live on Russell McKean Drive, and there's just a couple things I wanted to mention. When we were at the last public meeting, it was my understanding that the designs could change before it's actually built, and I'd like to know, how much it may change, and what happens if the design does change. Are there more meetings about it, or does it just go ahead? And the other thing I'd like to say is that I still have concerns about the traffic regarding where I live. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to mention.
Debbie, did you want to address them?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden. The resident is correct that it's a mapping amendment, so there is a possibility that the application design here could change. As for large-scale multiplexes, they could only get 3, 1 on each property, without having to enter into a development agreement, but they could have 3 at a maximum of 24 units per each one at a maximum height of 11 meters. The other options that could occur on the property is they could also do cluster townhouse development, and that would be in accordance with the R2T regulations, or they could do small multiplexes on site. So they could change it up, and they could have 3 small multiplexes with 8 units each on each property. So also it gives you a different layout. They would have to accommodate for parking, and I'm not sure that how many small multiplexes you could get if you had above ground parking on the site, because the large multiplexes allow for the underground parking, and it's, as far as my understanding, it's more economical to build the larger footprint buildings than it is to build the multiple smaller buildings.
If there were changes, would the public be advised?
Through you, Madam Warden. So the R3 process, if it does get redesignated and rezoned, it becomes an R3 property. In the R3 zone requirements, you're required to go through a site plan approval. Now, it would only be a notification of 30 meters for that site plan approval. So no matter what happens on the property, if the zoning gets approved, there will be the site plan approval. It goes to properties within 30 meters of these two properties, and those folks would be notified of the change. And they would be able to see the site plan and the elevation drawings at that point in time as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public?
Hi, I'm Sandra Daigle at 77 Shamrock Lane. I have quite a few concerns. First of all, I just wanted council to have the correct information before they actually make their judgment. I know when it comes to people, you got the people side. They don't like planning. The owner loves planning. Planning just wants to have it done. The issue I had is this has all been done before, but there was no history, and I really wanted council to have history. It was passed in the court, the judges, with the actual stipulations of measurements and whatever. Apparently, that was not kept after 8 years. So I was confused. It said concept plan, we're at a meeting, what is it? So I actually went to municipal affairs, and they said, no, it's a development plan. Well, there's certain rules for a development plan, there's certain rules for a concept plan, so I went back to development planning, and they said, no, it's neither a development plan nor a concept plan, even though it says concept plan, it's a site plan. So, okay, so I'm still confused. So,
I might be able to help with that.
Okay.
What's approved now is a site plan approval, and the new plan that's here, that's proposed, is a proposed concept plan.
no, I showed them that, and Debbie said, no, it's a site plan, because there's different rules and regulations with hearings and all that sort of stuff.
Well, at this point in time, this is a proposed concept plan.
Okay.
If it is taken forward, should this pass, and if it were passed by the development officer, it would be a site plan when it was taken forward for that
Okay.
approval.
Thank you for that. Because like they said, the buildings could go anywhere as long as it meets the R3 zoning. So that was clarified. Then a couple weeks ago, I got my tax assessment. Everybody's went up 39%, really sucks, doesn't it? So I go and look to the local areas in the community, because you can, it's on the PVSC website. And I see the property beside me, which is listed for 1.4 acres, where 1.4 million is only assessed under 200,000, and the property taxes assessment on 2.3 acres is $7,800, and the owner's paying $66 a year. Well, that was a big flag for me. Needless to say, I'm upset, I'm very upset. So luckily, through yourself and my MLA, and the Minister of Municipal Affairs, he passed it on to the Director of the province, and that's being looked after. So again, I looked through the internet, because the internet can show you everything, really. And there's another property agreement with ELT Holdings on Highway 214. It showed a draft agreement between the municipality and the developer of ELT Lino. Now, I was really confused with that, because we had a meeting prior with ELT Holdings who said he didn't develop property, he was just the landowner. So are you a developer or are you a landowner? Because this isn't development, this is just something for him to sell to a developer.
But
Right?
it is still, Madam, it's still a development, whether or not this gentleman finishes the development or whether or not another developer finishes it, it will still be governed by whatever was passed.
Right, so I wanted to know for my own sake, because it was mentioned to us finally, that he was not a developer at all, he sells it to developers. So I wanted to know what it said on the actual approved site plan. So after loopholes, I finally got a copy of the approved site plan. It has no agreement with the municipality listed, that's blacked out, and it has nobody listed as the landowner. So that held me a few things back. Now, also on that 3-acre commercial property, it showed 0 taxes paid and 0 assessment. So I thought that was a big flag too. So I emailed, I think it was you, I emailed everybody I could possibly think of. And I never got a response back. But then I thought, well, I can go on the provincial land registry and type the address in. That agreement number that you had no longer exists. It was taken off the land registry, just for future.
Did you want to address that, Debbie?
Through you, I can address, the property on Highway 214 isn't part of this application, and it has nothing to do with this application, just for clarification purposes. But the application site up here on the 214, the initial development agreement was negotiated with ELT Property Holdings, and it was a different process. It's a development agreement process. So there was a development agreement registered on those properties. And then the developer sold the properties to the person who's actually developing it now. That development agreement stays on those properties. It doesn't matter who the owner of the property is. That development agreement is applicable to those properties no matter who the owner is. And sometimes what happens when land is subdivided, the agreement is still there. It's just that it doesn't show up under the right thing underneath, and we just have to contact property online or whatnot if it isn't showing up there. But we have it on our own mapping stuff that development agreement is registered on those properties. It's a legal document, and they can't do anything else but what's included in that development agreement unless they come back to council.
Even if those plots are consolidated or subdivided, the
Yeah.
development agreement.
The development
They may be
agreement stays.
identified by different PID numbers, but the development agreement is still there.
It's still there. And what happens a lot of times is that when land is subdivided or is sold to somebody else, that development agreement sometimes ends up on somebody else's land that never was intended because it gets consolidated into another piece or a little parcel subdivided off. So it does travel with the land.
Well, see, that's why I wanted to look it up, because obviously if you go on the provincial map for assessments, it would show you your property or your new PID numbers, but I couldn't even find it anywhere. And the land registry tells me that before a development agreement can be reached with a developer, the land must be subdivided beforehand and PIDs given.
Through you, Madam Chair, no, you can write into the development agreement can be registered on any parcel of land, and then it can be subdivided. And in fact, a development agreement can actually stipulate at what stage land parcel has to be subdivided.
I then decided to go contact a lawyer outside regarding a rezone proposal. Based on the past history, I could ask planning what has changed since the last ruling to council to reconsider changing the
I think I
zone.
could take a stab at that, and Debbie, jump in if you need to.
Yeah.
I believe you're referring to the 2008 application,
Right.
which was for a 92-unit
Correct.
development, I believe. It was under a development agreement. It was under the land use bylaw that was in effect at the time, which was rewritten in 2016, I believe.
Yeah.
So different things are allowed. It was a different council. The
Oh, no, I know, but I just
The
want-
council of the day judged that application for a development agreement under the regulations that were in place at that time. A decision was made to not allow it. That decision was appealed. The Utility and Review Board upheld council's decision, and it was denied. That really was a totally different application for a totally different thing, and it doesn't have any bearing on the current application.
Well, see, when I looked and you see in the ruling, yes, it was based on a 92-unit schematic, but planning was using an R3 zoning example. An R3 zoning example, if you look in the actual documents that I read, that's what John Woodward was using, the R3 zone.
But that was an application that was denied some 15 years ago.
Yes, but
And it has no bearing on the application in front of us today.
Well, according to the lawyer, because I've been to court a few times, anything that's documented, you can use it as a case, represent a case, say yes, it's been decided, John Woodward said, now that property can't go past 35 feet, it might affect whatever, the groundwater was an issue, that was affected. If I wanted to say, well, this is already documented, a lawyer can represent me and say it's already, the study's already been done and what have you.
That would certainly be your choice, but this application has been made under the current land use bylaws, and that's what staff are making their recommendations
Right,
and
but there is
judgments on.
history based and law already passed based on all this done before. That's why I wanted council to look at that. And now you have it. And I really feel for you, but it's there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other member of the public have any?
Yes, I'd like to speak, please. Good evening, everyone. My name's Neil Hicks. I live at 37 Old Enfield Road. Firstly, I'd like to basically just briefly go over what happened last time when this a similar application to this was thrown out.
Well, I'm going to
it
interrupt
seemed-
you. The application last time was entirely different. It was for a development agreement, and it was 15 years ago. I will allow a small bit of leeway, but staff or council are not able to make their judgment based on a land use bylaw that was in effect 15 years ago. We are required to make our judgments and gather our information from the current land use bylaw.
Okay, well, if you don't wish to hear any of the history, I'll just proceed to
If
my
you make
next
it
point.
brief, if you want to, touch on some brief points, that's fine, but I
That's
just
all I
want,
intended to do.
I just want people to understand that this is a different application.
Okay. So, but in brief, 15 years ago, I believe that the application was thrown out because the planning committee at the time were asking questions. They were asking questions with the municipality regarding the drainage from stormwater, the sewage system, the schools, and they were receiving no answer, and they were just assuming that no answer was the answer they wanted. So anyway, as a resident of the local community, I purchased my house knowing that the zoning was mostly for a single occupancy dwelling. I strongly object to the proposed zoning change as it is completely unsuitable for our community. Now, hypothetically, if, to use the expression, the thin edge of the wedge, if this is approved, and the zoning is changed to R3, and then hypothetically, at some point in the future, if one of my neighbours decides to sell his property, and I could end up with another apartment building, right next door to me instead of 3 doors down the road. And that is a thing that I'm sure every resident in this room would not relish, being on the receiving end of. Anyway, to go back to the other development that was rejected 14 years ago, what's changed? I don't see that any of the schools have been enlarged to accommodate extra school children. I've not seen any improvement to the sewage system or the stormwater drainage in the area. I believe that the traffic along the Old Enfield Road is great. I've lived there for 30 years, and it's far busier now than it's ever been, and it's very often difficult to get out of the end of the road by Home Hardware because the traffic on the number 2 is a lot more busy. And so, all in all, I was against this 15 years ago, and I'm against it now. And I think that that is completely wrong for this area of Enfield. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come here.
Troy Seaboyer, 41 Old Enfield Road. I'm Neil's neighbor that he's worried about selling and building an apartment building from. But I echo those comments. And actually, I have a small family, my son and my dog and myself, and we take our lives in our hands every time we cross the street to the sidewalk, the short sidewalk that's only past Aroma Maya, and then, if you want to go to Heavenly Scoops, you might actually end up in heaven because there's no crosswalk there at all. So we're talking about a disaster that's waiting to happen. There is no traffic control there at all, and no sidewalks on our side, on the walking side, and there is no crosswalks to enable those kids to go to Heavenly Scoops. So, I just don't get it. Now, besides the fact that I'm a fairly new member to the community, and I did move from Dartmouth because I didn't want to be surrounded by apartment buildings, and now they're popping up, yeah, that makes me concerned too, because I wanted a single dwelling family in a community that would promote that kind of life and livelihood. And that's why I moved here 4 years ago. And now I'm feeling like that's not going to happen, right? Now maybe I can profit from it and sell my property and build another tower, right? Is that what we're going to do now? Tower, 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 because that's what's going to happen. Look at the PID layout. It's going to happen. It's going to come one after the other. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Glenn Cruz, 66 Shamrock Lane, Enfield. Could I ask if the zoning is changed to MRU, what would be the maximum number of units that could be put on that property with a development agreement?
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just give me 1 sec there and see what the information says.
Well, while she does that, I'll just yabber on here. I mean, the influx of people into the province, the province wants our population up. Municipal councils across this province have to deal with that. I understand your staff has to deal with that, try to accommodate the needs of the people that are coming here. But on the other hand, I don't want your desperation to fill that need to overlook the needs of the people that are here, which obviously is us. So I just want to remind you of those two burdens that you have to weigh.
Debbie's doing the math.
Well, it's, once that number comes out, I'm pretty sure it's going to be more than the village core zoning will allow. And that's what I'm stressing to you, that I would very much like to see the village core zoning stay. It's as much in keeping with what we have, which is mostly simply R1, R2 in the area, as we're going to get. Once we go to MU, multiple use, that's going to increase, and with development agreements, that increases, and we're just way outside the box of what's comfortable for the local citizens. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Warden. So the conditional uses by a development agreement allows large multiplex developments having more than the maximum number of dwelling units permitted up to a maximum ratio of 24 dwelling units per 0.3 hectares. So by that calculation, you'd be able to have 72 dwelling units, which is the maximum that they're already at. So it wouldn't suit them to go for a development agreement.
So a development agreement would not allow for more than 72.
Yeah. What you could do with a development agreement, if you didn't want to subdivide the lands, you could apply for a development agreement to allow all 3 buildings on the same property. But that wouldn't be, yeah. Wouldn't change the number of units.
Thank you. Any other member of the public?
Sorry, I forgot
Ms.
something.
Daigle?
Sandra Daigle, 77 Shamrock Lane. I back on the property. There is no buffers. Hurricane 1 took all the trees down. Shadowing, the diagram you showed me is not the same diagram that Debbie showed me this morning. The one I have is from Ottawa. I'm trying to get the right one there, but I believe I sent you the right diagram for shadowing. I emailed that to you today. Just for let you know, it's a lot worse than what that looks like.
So you, Madam Warden, this is the exact same document.
I could come over and show it to you.
I stuck it in there myself, so.
I sent it to you today. Eleanor, you should have a copy of it.
Quite possibly within the
I'm sure you
email
were busy.
documents.
I'm sure you were busy, but just wanted to give you a heads up on it.
Through you, Madam Warden, what might,
No, it's like,
Order.
that one's completely, and it says Mississauga, Ontario, and the time difference would be an hour and a half, which would make the whole, and I'm trying to get it. Debbie sent me the link. I had to get it to Nova Scotia, but I'm
True.
trying to play with it, and I'm just,
Go ahead, Debbie.
To you, Madam Warden, what the resident may be referring to is that council was provided, and it's on our municipal website, applications page 2. This one, it also shows 2 different times, because what they do is the times of day also with the averages. So there's one from March and one for September that shows what the average in between of the longest and shortest days are. And we have also placed the worst case scenario, so if there was 2 apartment buildings along the back portion of the property line at 11 meters high and 10 meters back, what that would look like. So that is available, and it's available to the public as well to see that. And what the resident is referring to in regards to the methodology was taken from Ontario because Nova Scotia municipalities, for the most part, don't have a standard of how they actually do shadow mapping, and Halifax does have a shadow mapping thing, but they look at their shadows in relation to viewpoints, so they don't want any shadows, for example, on their certain view planes. So, but this is, what's shown here is what's shown in the other documents as well, and other pictures are also shown in the documents, but those are available to council and available to the public if they wanted to see
And
them.
Eleanor, I did send you a copy. Thank you.
And I believe that, Debbie, you did provide those answers earlier today.
Yes, I
correct?
did.
Yes. Any other member of the public? Come ahead.
My name is Candace Peters. My husband and I own 21 Old Enfield Road as an investment property. We specifically bought this property as because it was village core and it does have specific development areas. We actually really support this property that Lino is proposing here because it goes with the village core, the whole village core plan for this whole road of Old Enfield Road. If we've lived here for 10 years and we were very happy to actually get a property here so that it could be a future investment property for us for something that we could build. When Aroma Maya came up, that was really awesome. We think that building looks really, really nice. If you're living in a single dwelling along this road, yes, it can stay a single dwelling, but it's eventually going to, like, the plan is to have more of the shops at the bottom and the apartment buildings on top. The only difference in the zoning seems to be that it's just not going to have the shops in the bottom. So we support it, and we're actually happy to see this kind of thing starting to happen on this road.
Come ahead.
Hello, my name's Cody Thompson. I'm just a local in Enfield. So I'm for and against the whole idea, but it's a 3-story unit. Is there going to be an elevator or like wheelchair accessible way to get to the top floor? Because made out of plywood and stuff, I'm not sure if you can do the elevator after the fact it's built. I'm not too sure. I'm not a I'm not a construction guy.
What we have is a concept plan, but what perhaps staff could address is the requirements in a 3-story building.
A 3-story, wouldn't that have an elevator if it's wheelchair accessible, or no? And for an emergency exit as well. There's just one way in, one way out for that driveway.
John? Sorry. The system is laggy tonight. It's not letting me turn off and turn on mics. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead,
Okay,
John.
thank you, Madam Warden. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the building code would not require an elevator for 3 stories. Typically, developers do add them, though. Just, it's harder to rent units on a 3rd floor if you don't have an elevator. And then the ones we've seen till now in the corridor, the newer ones, have elevators. That's a pretty standard thing.
Okay. And so also about that, about the elevator thing. Oh yeah, so for the $3 million per building, that seems fairly cheap for a 24 dwelling or unit dwelling building. So after all the board rots away, the municipality has to, they have income for it, but do they have to pay for the fixing all this rotten wood every couple of years? Or is that part of the investment?
Okay, Debbie?
Through Madam Chair, the assessed value that was used for the fiscal impact is just what the actual property is assessed at by PVSC. It doesn't mean that's what it cost. So what we did is we just looked at existing buildings in the area and kind of took a ballpark figure from those. And so those assessments may not be relevant to what the market value is, what the new construction value is. And as you know, the cost of everything is going up. So I expect, as you said, that those buildings would actually cost more to build than $3 million. But we had to use what was already existing in the neighborhood for our financial impact assessment. And it's better to be a little conservative than to go there.
I'd like
And
to
I
know
would
if,
I'd just like to add to that too, that the municipality would not own these buildings or be responsible for any repairs to them.
Okay.
And that but the municipality would be responsible to make sure they were built to code.
okay, yeah. And so about the elevator thing, so I know everything has to be wheelchair accessible nowadays, right? So your 4-foot wide hallways and whatnot, because I have older relatives who are going to be in a wheelchair soon enough, right? So I like to have a place for them. I just wouldn't want to carry them up 3 sets of stairs to get them inside. So I wonder how we go about the 3 stories not being no elevator kind of thing. That's all. If we maybe another date or something, or today.
Through you, Madam Warden, what I failed to mention earlier is that whether or not an elevator is required, a certain number of the units will have to be accessible. So presumably, if there's no elevator, they would be on the ground floor. And I can't remember the ratio off the top of my head, but there is a ratio in the code.
Okay.
So under the building code, there would be a certain number of units that have to be accessible.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I just have one final point, if you
Come
don't
ahead,
mind.
sir.
Yeah, so on my property, over time, a lot of ditches and coverts have been built to manage the runoff because it's all clay. It doesn't absorb the water. So it's been a weird ecosystem over time. All of our properties have morphed and changed to allow the water to sit in agreeable areas amongst all of our properties. So I'm really concerned, being downhill from that property, what that's going to do to this delicate balance of all of these inherited waterways and flow-throughs that are within everybody's properties that are surrounding this property, that's now going to have a giant parking lot on top of it.
Maybe?
Through you, Madam Warden. So in the R3 zone, you're required to do a stormwater management plan for the property as part of the site plan approval process. And a stormwater management plan, the requirement is that you have to balance pre and post flows. So basically you have to balance it so that no more water is going into the system than what was already going into the system. And doesn't mean that it's going to fix any existing issues, but it's not supposed to make any of the issues more worse in the community. Also, in addition to that, with each building, they have to do a lock grading and drainage plan, which means that they have to come up with a plan to make sure that their water from their property isn't draining in, for example, one of these 2 properties along here, and that it's going into the stormwater system, so it's being handled correctly. And each of those are and you have to do one for each building as you're constructing them. And then we make, somebody has to sign off on it saying that it was constructed properly in accordance with that lock grading and drainage plan. Since
Thank you, Debbie.
All right.
Come ahead.
Trust.
I'm Jeff Hazer. I own 21 Enfield Road with my wife. I'm just curious, this gentleman moved in 4 years ago, but that zoning map has been like that for far longer. So it should be no surprise that there's going to be developments in that area. Concerns about runoff, it's probably going to be more controlled after it's developed than the natural grade. I don't see much validity in the concerns of the runoff.
Well, we're not going to entertain debate among the public. I would ask you, sir, if you would address your comments.
I guess
It seemed like it was directed towards my comment.
And that's what I'm asking.
Well,
to direct.
it kind of was. It was, to move here for a quiet residential, single-family property when the zoning map has clearly showed what the future is for that strip. It just,
I don't think that showed me at all when I bought my property. I was not
Counselor, okay.
receiving anybody building an apartment.
Gentlemen,
okay.
please.
Yeah, it looks like it's all the same blue, right?
You gotta read what it means.
Okay, we'll have order, folks. Any other member of the public have any comments or questions for staff? Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, Beverly Hicks, 37 Old Enfield Road. The one thing I want to say is, which was brought up earlier, is the fire one way in, or the fire escape for the area. It says that, it was saying that there needed to be two ways out of an area. So Bakery Lane is a dead end. And this piece of property is on Bakery Lane, which you're adding another 72 apartments to that, and only one way out, not two ways out.
Debbie, do you want to take that one, please?
Sure. So Bakerly Lane, under the report that was presented to our Planning Advisory Committee for secondary access, didn't reach the threshold of 50 dwelling units on the lane right now. And under the current subdivision bylaw, the regulations state that it's based on lots and not dwelling units. So that means that up to 100 lots can be developed on one access before the second access is required. Council will be considering changes to that subdivision bylaw regulations to relate more to dwelling units. But as of right now, the current reading of the subdivision bylaw is related to lots and is 100 lots on one access before the second access is required. And so that's one thing, and we'd have to count how many lots is actually on Bakerly Lane as part of this application, but they're only creating 3 new lots here, so I don't imagine it would reach that threshold. In the future, I can't tell you what, because it would be a council decision, what the access requirements may be based on the dwelling units and how many dwelling units could be allowed on one access. So that's something for a future council consideration. And I guess if this is approved, there's a timeline there depending on when the applicant applies for site plan approval and when council determines how many accesses can be, or how many dwelling units can be on one access. It's just depending on timing, who gets there first and what those regulations are.
And we're bound to what's in the current subdivision bylaw until
That's
such
correct.
time as that might be changed.
Yeah, so it's based on the current regulations and not something that council might be considering.
Anything further? Any other member of the public who's here in person have any questions or comments? Come ahead, Lino.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to remind everyone, we're already approved for a 72 unit. As Debbie mentioned earlier, all the proper departments, from Department of Transportation to Fire Department to Police, they all have a knowledge of what we're doing there. And we're approved to what we're doing there. The only difference here is we're changing the concept, how the project's gonna look. And I do personally see the benefit between this, and some of the public members and staff have seen the difference between this plans and the previous plan. Lots of green, more buffer to the neighbors, less pavement, underground parking, less garbage, no garbage outside. If you look at the core village bylaws, you're allowed to build the building really close to the line, where this one here totally different. The bylaws here does not allow to build really close. It has to be at least 7 meters, which is 20-some feet. We all see the difference here. And, to some of the neighbors of the property, with all respect, the whole strip is zoned for core village. And core village will allow up to 12 units per lot. Even some of these lots on the main road, they could be subdivided to more than one lot. So they could be 24 on them. Sorry if they weren't aware of that, but this is what the zoning is. And that zoning has been in place for a lot more than 5 and 6 years before I even bought this place. So whether it's me or someone else, this zoning has been active for long enough time. Anyone could done this. And it's already, the zone is the lot, as of right, without anybody's opinion or anybody's consultation, we're allowed to have 72 units. But we're going to a different concept, and I hope the neighbors understand what we're doing. And here it is, and council staff, your decision to make. Thank you very much. And I apologize if I hurt anybody's feeling.
Any other members of the public? Seeing none in person, I would ask Julianne if we have anybody on the YouTube chat who wishes to comment or has any questions. I'm seeing that we do not. Does any member of staff have any final comments?
No.
I would now ask the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee to present his No, there is not. The final questions or comments from councilors would be after the PAC chair. Okay. Councilor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council give second reading and approve the application from ELT Property Holdings Limited to amend the MPS and LUB by change the land use designation of PID 45118221 and PID 45078-748 to medium density residential neighborhood MR and rezone the same land to multiple unit residential R3 zone, subject to the existing site plan approval being discharged from the same properties. As chair of PAC, I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Head. Now, are there any final questions or comments from municipal councilors? Councilor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Thank you, Madam Warden. Just in response to the gentleman talking about the lack of crosswalks to Heavenly Scoops, trust me, it's not from lack of effort. We have been working diligently, but haven't been able to get one there yet. But we will continue to push for that. People look through a change like this through different lenses. We get developers looking through the lens of wanting to develop. We have planning and development teams who are looking to do just that. We have people moving in who want to buy properties for investments and are looking ahead to the potential for that. And we have people who have lived here for many years who are sorry to see the direction of the way things are going. So we have to be aware of the different lenses that people are looking through a change like this, and lots of changes that are happening in our community. The problem with putting in higher density developments in an area like this, it's not like up in Lance by the rink where there's no single dwelling homes there. It's not like even Concord Way where there's no homes, or there weren't at the time, right next to them. This is a property that has single dwelling homes on all three sides of it. You know, what people are objecting to here, they realize now, or they're beginning to realize, that 72 units are going to go in here. But it's how it looks. And you may say, well, you know what, so many meters, if it goes by village core, it's going to be so many meters high. And that's true, but it's going to look substantially different. I just want to, I have an excerpt from an email that I received, and it was a very succinct email today, and I'd just like to read part of it to you. Nobody living in a single-family home would wish to have multiple three-story buildings next door to them. The current zoning provides for more density than either R1 or R2 permits. So that's what the current zoning provides now. And it respects the scale and context of the existing neighborhood. The difference between the VC zone and the MUR R3 zone is immense. And we believe that it's more than our officials should endorse. We understand that there is a need for more housing, and we know that this land will be developed. However, we ask that council consider the current neighborhood style. People don't want to lose that community. And yes, there is going to be a development there. But when you start going up to what is proposed, when you go from Village Core to this, when you bump it up, it's a big change. And we have to, you can't ignore that. We have to respect that. You may not like it. You may think, well, you know what, it's not that much different. It is different when somebody is living in a bungalow right behind it, looking up at it. And then there is the possibility that, yes, the person who it's built by is going to say, you know what, I'm out of here. And then it can keep going and going. And yeah, there is going to be development along there. And right now it's Village Core. In 2018, I believe, we put the Village Core in there. Go ahead, Debbie.
Madam Warden, sorry. The Village Core has been there, I think, since 2000. It was put in place when I looked at the old documents along the old Enfield Road there. It's
Oh,
been-
perfect. That doesn't change it at all. So Village Core is there now. Doesn't mean that we have to change that zoning, but by changing that zoning, we are opening it up to changing that zoning all along there. And I just don't agree with it. This has been a contentious site right from 2008 when it was proposed. Again, in May of 2021, when the neighbors appealed the site plan approval given to the developer, council upheld that. It was contentious then. It's still contentious. And yes, there's still going to be 72 units there, but it's going to look different, it's going to feel different, and it is going to be different. And I just don't believe we should take that step from Village Core to what we're proposing here now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just a question or two. First off, with this new proposal, is there a common or picnic or play area that are planned for this area, this development?
Through you, Madam Warden, under the regulations for the R3 zone, they are required to provide two types of amenity space. They're required to provide amenity space outdoors, and we have a set of design requirements for that amenity space. And they're required to provide amenity space, a common amenity space within the building itself when you have 24 dwelling units. So there'll be one inside and one on the roof, and they're also, they have to have some, balconies. Now, the balconies don't have to be evenly distributed, so there could be some balconies that are bigger than others, but there's also that private space as well.
So has the developer indicated where this space would be on the exterior?
Through you, Madam Warden, it hasn't been shown on the site plan, no. They would be required to do so as part of the actual site plan approval process. They also don't show, as I mentioned before, bicycle parking location as well. But it could be located in the rear yard, or it could be located on top of a building, or, it could be located back there if this is the exact site plan that they're doing. So there are some requirements. There's also buffering requirements for the property as well, so that amenity space area would be buffered. In the buffering requirements, either a 1.8 meter opaque fence, either vegetation around the property, a combination of the both, or a berm.
Okay, so what you're saying in the short then is they can come in after and decide where this is gonna be, where this play common
Well,
area.
that would be what would happen, because it would be at site plan approval. All we have now is a concept.
So that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
All right, so there will be. Now, another gentleman talked about open double doors in the back wouldn't be there. So what is the back of this? Can you show me on these pictures that will face that person's property?
So you, Madam Warden, what the gentleman was referring to is that this was the side elevation of the current site plan approval. So how the double doors are shown right there. He was referring to that because there's a walkway right in front of that. So those double doors were located along the side. There's no elevation drawings to go with this because, as I said, it's just for mapping amendments. It's not for the approval of the actual site plan. But the applicant has shown that there's going to be doors here on the front for an access, doors here on the side, on the concept plan here, and then again, same doors here on this front, and doors on this
Yeah, but
building here, looking into the side. They don't show anything coming off the back onto the rear of the,
But could those have patio doors there on that back facing that property?
potentially, yep.
So they could. So
Yep.
to me, a patio door is no different than a double door, but, I mean, if the person is happy with it, I guess the person has already stated he was. You talked about access onto a Bakery Lane, and that kind of opened me up when you said that, you know, it has to be 100 units before, or 100 lots before it is required a second access?
Under the current subdivision bylaw, that's correct.
Yeah, well, I think it's a fine line between lots and units, because if you take the 50 that are on, that I heard previously on Bakery Lane, and the 72, even if they hit one vehicle, that's 122 vehicles coming out of that, right? Possibly could have as much as two in each one. So when we get to that stage that we're going to investigate this, I'll be speaking about that, because I think it's a fine line between units and lots, right?
Now, staff
It's a-
have already been instructed to bring us
Yes.
a report addressing that.
I understand that. It's the density of the lot that concerns me, and what you can put on that lot, so we'll be speaking of that. I really hear the people, and I feel for them. You know, they bought single and R1 and R2s and along there. I have empathy for them, because I probably personally wouldn't want to live beside a big apartment building. But that's not the question here tonight. The question in here tonight is, right now, the developer could build 6 12-unit buildings right there, so which is 72. He's asking, he's asking for 3 24-unit buildings. And by looking at these plans, I gotta make a decision, and I gotta make a decision on what to me looks better and what would probably be give more privacy to a lot of these people. And I would say, you know, that this 3 24-unit would looks much better, and I think it would give the community probably a little bit more privacy than what it would spreading out the other way and having parking lots right up against the property line. So, you know, I feel for the people, and I understand about this, you know, putting so much on Bakery Lane. But the question for me is what would fit that area better, and what would I think would be better for that area? And I would have to say that the 3 24s would probably be the best fit. It's not a great question to pose in front of me, because I'm not a fan of apartment buildings. But when I have to pick at this point, I'd have to choose that one. Thank you.
Counselor Musa. It will change.
Thank you, Madam Warden. We've heard a lot about the density, but I think when they changed the plan 2000 or 2016, all the public had to have input about it, right, John? Or
Yes.
you had to ask for people for. I know when the zoning happened in Mount Uniacke, they had so many meetings, and if you're not happy with your zoning, you could say, I don't want that. You could object it. If somebody objected back then, that village core wouldn't be there. So for the people who were there before, it's their fault they didn't object it. And for the people who moved in, they should do their research and know what's going on there. So that's how I see it. We inherit that plan, and we have to vote to that plan that put in front of us. We have nothing to go. We cannot go as a councilor go back to the 20 years ago when this happened. We have to look what's allowed now in here and what's the best for the community. I think there's a lot of green in this concept, and compared to the other one where there's nothing but asphalt and buildings. So to me, that look much better. I know a lot of people are not gonna like my vote, but I voted because I'm gonna vote because this concept looks so much better than the other one, especially with the garbage. Like, I know I live in a rural area, and the rodent kill could be a disaster for anybody. So I cannot add anything more. Thank you.
Okay. Any other counselor have any final comments or questions? The question has been called. And the motion has passed by a vote of 9-1, with Councillor Garden Cole voting nay. Okay, councillors, the third public hearing this evening is a proposal to redesignate and rezone lands and enter into a development agreement to enable a mixed-use master planned development. I would now ask the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee to present his report. Go ahead, Norval.
Planning Advisory Committee has considered the proposal on behalf of Municipal Council. The committee has reviewed staff's report, completed their evaluation, and will make a recommendation to council during this hearing. Madam Warden, through you, I would now ask staff to present their final report on the proposal.
Debbie? Go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Warden. So the subject property is outlined here in red. The applicant is FH Development Group, Inc. The location is between Highway 102 and Highway 2 down below, and it's the last property within the northern end of the South Corridor and Commercial Growth Management Area, and that also serves as the boundary for where services will be provided. The size of the subject property is 111 hectares, and the proposal is to amend the municipal planning strategy, land use bylaw, and to enter into a development agreement for a mixed-use master plan neighborhood, including a mixture of low, medium, and higher density residential development, open space, and commercial uses. So, as I mentioned, this is a property. It's currently zoned R2, which allows for single and two-unit dwellings as of right. The neighboring property to the north here is zoned rural use and is not included into the serviceable boundary. And same with the property across Highway 2, that's not part of the serviceable boundary either. We then have R1 on Robert Scott Drive, and walkable comprehensive development district on Armco Capital Inc. lands, and there's a development agreement in place to allow for a master plan community here. So the development proposals for approximately 1,500 dwelling units. We have a site plan shown here from the applicant. We have, just for context, we have Highway 102 running up at the top, and we have Highway 2 running down here at the bottom. And there's 3 phases to the proposed development. Phase 1 runs along that dashed line here. Phase 2 is in the middle, and it goes around the Barneys Brook, that dashed line, and then Phase 3 is up top. Single unit dwellings, there's proposed to be 375, and the frontages proposed are 10.4 meters and 12.2 meters. And those are shown here in the yellowish colors. 2-unit dwellings, 164, and this is in the darker blue, shown in Phase 1 and 2. And then we have townhouse units, 232. We have 2 sections of townhouse units. So in Phase 1, we have on-street townhouses, and in Phase 3, we have cluster or stacked townhouses in this general area here. Multiple unit dwelling units, so there's 690 proposed for those. And there are apartment buildings proposed for the entrance here, the pink, and in Phase 1. And then there's also mixed-use buildings proposed for the site at the very northern end of the property. And this is a concept plan showing those apartment buildings. Again, it would be commercial on the ground floor and then apartment units above. And there is a swamp in the background, so it might look like that in the back. And then we show a concept plan here for the commercial lands, and that's just on the corner of the new entrance in Highway 2. On the very corner, it's more highway commercial type uses, such as the gas station, the fast food restaurant, the car wash, those types of uses, whereas the second property in is more for those professional services where it could be a doctor's office, it could be a restaurant, it could be a hairdresser's, it could be an accountant, those types of uses, it could be a daycare, so it allows for those local commercial type uses. And again, these are concept plans, just showing what could possibly be there. Open space and trails. So there's one park in each phase of the development, with the largest park shown in phase 1 of the development, and then the second largest in phase 2, and then there's a smaller park in phase 3, but there is also the Barney's Brook Trail that is part of phase 3. This trail is proposed to connect into the trail that will be part of the Armco Capital Link lands, and together from one end to the other end of the trail, it's supposed to be 2.6 kilometers in length from the start to the finish. Once it is built. An AT route also extends through the property, so phase 1 and 2. So it's proposed to start down here where the access is onto Highway 2, go through phase 1 up to phase 2. It will connect into the Armco Capital Link lands, the active transportation route, and then go to the end of the property as well. So it goes by both parks. And connects into the Armco Capital Link lands. And the active transportation route is actually a sidewalk, 3 meters wide, asphalt, and is part of the road network. Walkways are required as well as per the subdivision bylaw, and those are shown with those light green arrows. Conservation lands are next, and that's in the lighter green here. So there's 2 major wetlands on the subject property, and for the most part, those conservation lands are proposed to be maintained. The edges of them may have some alterations, and the developer will have to apply to Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change for any alterations to the edges of those wetlands. And then we should have stormwater management areas, and they'll be designed as per municipal standards, and they're located throughout the development, and will be designed to handle the stormwater on the site, and they'll work with the wetlands as a natural asset for the stormwater system. At their September meeting, Council agreed to consider the addition of an emergency access point from the higher density development area C, so this area here, along a new proposed access point through the proposed commercial lands B, and onto Highway 2. So that essentially would allow any apartment buildings built here, and there's proposed to be 196 dwelling units built on this site, to, in a case of emergency, access the back portion and go out to Highway 2. And there are stipulations of what that has to entail within the draft development agreement. And then that would also allow for the new road that will be constructed here to have the 100 dwelling units on it from farther back. So there will be 2 ways out of the development there. And that brings it up to the point where after that they would have to connect to the Armco Capital Link lands, and then connect back down to Highway 2, which would give them their 2 accesses. This just shows how the Armco Capital Link land development kind of blends in with the proposed concept plan here for this application, and shows the length of the trail, Barney's Brook Trail, going through, and then the active transportation route that connects in to the Armco Capital Link lands goes back down to Highway 2, and it also goes up through the remainder of the development, and there's proposed to be a 4-hectare community park there. And these arrows here just show the 2 accesses from the site for the initial phase to be able to do the dwelling units with 2 accesses. These are the proposed amendment maps, the general future land use maps and the land use bylaw maps, and they both show the property being rezoned to walkable comprehensive development district. The planning application has 2 parts, the mapping amendments and the development agreement. Both parts of the application have been processed together. However, the development agreement is contingent on the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw mapping amendments being approved. And Council's policy goal for the Walkable Comprehensive Development District is to establish an avenue for the consideration of relatively large-scale mixed-use and phased development proposals using the Comprehensive Development District tool. These developments should create a development conducive to active transportation through human-scale developments designed to create visual interest at street level. Developments are also permitted and encouraged to use creativity through alternative roadway standards and new urbanism design development principles. Staff have received comments from both internal departments and external agencies, and I'll go through those now. So Nova Scotia Public Works, a traffic impact study has been completed for the proposed development. A northbound left turn lane from Highway 2 into the development is required. The study also recommends lowering the Highway 2 speed limit by shifting the existing speed transition zone from Robert Scott Drive northward to beyond the South Quarter and Commercial Growth Management Area. This would lower the speed limit to 60 kilometers an hour in the study area. In addition, the study also recommends that Nova Scotia Public Works begins long-term transportation planning for the corridor. So the transportation study was provided to Nova Scotia Public Works for their consideration, and I can actually say that they are undergoing a traffic impact analysis for the corridor right now, Enfield, Elmsdale, Lance area. Nova Scotia Public Works has reviewed the draft provisions within the development agreement, and they are okay with those requirements. RCMP recognizes that traffic in the corridor will be increased from the continued growth of the community, and traffic will need to be managed. And we've also forwarded their concerns to Nova Scotia Public Works. The Chignecto Regional Centre for Education, so the Director of Operational Services, has indicated that the proposed development does have the potential to impact schools in the area. And while there is capacity currently in the schools, the potential development, along with the current growth, will increase schools towards capacity and will require additional supporting elements such as staff, space, and resources. The director further states that the Regional Centre for Education will consider this information to supplement their planning tools as they evaluate the capacity utilization during their planning process. And we're going to meet with the Centre for Education to discuss population growth in the corridor to help with their planning process. Staff estimate that the number of school-aged children will be approximately 557 at full build-out, and the applicant may apply for an unsubstantial amendment to the development agreement for institutional uses on the commercial or multiple unit dwelling areas, which would permit the development of a new school. So this is something different that we've done from the other development agreements. We've actually written a stipulation that they could, through an unsubstantial amendment, allow for the development of a new school on the property. So it's an option that can be considered if down the road, with the predicted growth, a new school is warranted. Reviewing agencies, so the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Department has reviewed the application, and PRC has requested a combination of land and cash in lieu, and the cash in lieu will be used for the development of the parks within the development site. And so park staff is satisfied with the layout and size of the park land. So again, phase one, the park has the largest park, and it also has a cash in lieu portion. Phase two is the second largest park and has a cash in lieu portion. And phase three, there's no cash in lieu, but it's the smaller park, but it also has the width of the Barneys Brook Trail. The walkways in between the blocks, again, are required under the subdivision bylaw, are not part of open space. And just in relation to the park network between the two developments in the area, ARMCO will have that 4-hectare community park, and it will be within walking distance of the majority of residents within the proposed development site. And actually, that 2.6 kilometer trail along Barneys Brook passes right through the park, and the active transportation route passes right beside the park as well. Fire services, so Lance Fire Emergency Services has not provided comments on the application. However, as part of the fiscal impact analysis for the application, the fire levy was approximated if full build-out of the FH Development Group lands occurred, and the fire service would receive an additional $462,277 per year from the development if the fire levy is maintained at the current percentage. Economic and business development staff have provided their feedback directly to the applicant, and will continue to work with the applicant if the application is approved. Infrastructure and operations, so in addition to the standard comments regarding servicing, INO indicated that traffic calming measures will be required throughout the development in accordance with municipal standards, and water and sewer servicing will be subject to available capacity at time of tentative subdivision approval. So that just means just because you approve the application doesn't mean they automatically get the capacity for 1,500 dwelling units. It means that at each stage that they submit tentative plan of subdivision approval, our engineers will review and determine what the capacity is at that point in time. Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change have not provided comments. They will have additional opportunities to comment on the application during the subdivision process. As well, the applicant will have to apply for a permit to alter the wetland from Nova Scotia Environment. Fiscal impact analysis. So municipal finance staff have prepared a comprehensive fiscal impact analysis. The total tax revenue per year from the proposed development is estimated to be $3,866,334. The total cost of providing services to the proposed development per year is estimated to be $3,218,658. At full build-out, there's estimated to be a financial benefit to the municipality of $647,676 annually. Therefore, as proposed, the development will have a positive financial impact on the municipality. And we've included just the breakdown that the finance staff have prepared for us, just to show where the costs are and where the money from the development goes. Citizen engagement, an advertisement outlining the application and indicating that it had been received and was under review by staff was placed in the Chronicle Herald. An open house and public information meeting was held on May 3rd of 2023, and meeting notes have been included in the staff report. First reading of the mapping amendments and initial consideration of the development agreement was given at the June 20th, 2023 meeting of council. And a questionnaire was sent to property owners within 300 meters of the subject property. Only one questionnaire was returned from a resident who was concerned about the size of the development, the height of the buildings, and the impact on the swamps. And a copy of that return questionnaire has been provided for councillors for their review. So the two major wetlands located on the subject land are not proposed to be infilled. Instead, these areas will be retained as conservation lands and will act as a natural asset to the proposed stormwater management network. The overall density of the FH Development Group Inc. proposal is 13.5 dwelling units per hectare, which is greater than the 10 dwelling units per hectare approved in the ARMCO development agreements. A higher density equates to a more efficient delivery of municipal services and better tax revenue. The height of the large multiplexes proposed for the application site are 6 stories, the same height that has been approved by council for both the ARMCO Capital Inc. application site and the Shaw Group application site. We went over when the notices appeared in the Chronicle Herald. They also appeared again on social media and on our municipal website, as well as the date and time of the public hearing was mailed to property owners within 300 meters of the subject property. In conclusion, the applicant has demonstrated a commitment to the Walkable Comprehensive Development District goals by submitting a proposal that encourages walkability and active transportation. New urbanism development principles have been incorporated into the development agreement by providing a variety of land uses. Residential development is proposed to be comprised of varying densities and housing types. Parkland, trails, and active transportation routes will not only benefit the development, but will also benefit the neighboring proposed residential areas. The proposed concept plan proposes seamless connections to the approved ARMCO Capital Link development proposal to create a continuous and connected community. The proposed development is in the long-term fiscal interest of the municipality. Community design will serve future residents with a high degree of walkability, a variety of housing and recreation opportunities while protecting key natural features. The FH Development Group Inc. proposal has been evaluated using all applicable policies in the municipal planning strategy. And based on this evaluation, staff find the proposed development consistent with the spirit and intent of the municipal planning strategy and recommend approval. Thank you, Madam Warden.
Thank you, Debbie. Does any member of council have questions for staff? Councilor Rhino.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to Debbie, could you go back to that sewer capacity, water capacity? What you said, it doesn't guarantee that they will have sewer and water capacity at the time. So if there's not the capacity there and there's an overabundant, this development wants to put in way over what we can control, is that gonna force us to then bump up our sewer treatment plants?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll let the director explain a little bit more, but from what my understanding is that we've added a clause to the subdivision bylaw that only a certain amount of capacity is allocated at one point in time. And we're constantly updating our numbers and looking at what capacity we have and what projects we need to do in the future. And that's where some of those infrastructure charges come from. They go towards building in the capacity for the future. And we do it based on a first come, first serve situation. So if, for example, FH was to come before some other development within the corridor and apply for tentative plan of subdivision approval, they would get the capacity before that, maybe some other application.
So obviously, it's not earmarked. It's not until that time.
Yeah.
All right. So if we had several hit the books all at one time, hit the road running, what could we handle? Could we handle the capacity of those two big developments that are slated for that area right now? Or would we have to start to expand right away?
CAO said she would weigh in on that one.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So the principle that we have in place is there's lots of housing development that's been approved in principle for East Hants through your walkable comprehensive development districts and others. It's not realistic for council to go out and build infrastructure to meet 5,000 housing units when we have no guarantee of when those are going to come and when they're not. Your fiscal impact analysis tool gives you that indication that these developments will still pay for themselves based on the work that would need to be done to get there. So no, we don't have the capacity guaranteed for all of these developments. And it is first come, first serve. But there's also limits on that too. So someone can't come in and just say, well, I'm going to build 1,000 units and sit there for 5 years and not do it. So that's all been built into the process. But no, council can't, it just wouldn't be advisable for council to build up your infrastructure, and which may never come. There's no guarantee that all these houses are going to come. So that's sort of the stepping stone that we have in place. Has been set out in your subdivision and your planning documents.
Sorry, Keith.
We would have to put that in increments as the development comes on board.
Yeah, so as your development comes on board and as you get to a point where developers are saying, well, we'd like to build, and if we say, well, the capacity's not there, the councils of the day will have to approve those capital projects or not, depending on what they want to do. So there's no guarantees by approving this that you're guaranteeing that capacity is going to be there for future development.
Thank you.
I should add, Madam Warden, we're always working towards that, of course. So the work that we're doing is continued, like knowing what we have ahead of us, we're always looking to the next 5 and 10 years, what those projects need to be to keep up with the development the council's approved. The council still has that ability to approve your capital budgets and those projects as you move forward.
I guess I understand that probably better than most, but if people out there that are listening that don't understand this, maybe that got a little bit of, give them a little bit of information. So, thank you.
Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Debbie, can you show the big concept plan with Aramco next to it? So, to me, those two look a beautiful design for a community. But the problem is, if Aramco start on this side, then the second exit is gonna take years to get. Like if they don't start on the closer side to the new development, how the second exit's gonna work out?
Through Madam Warden. So as I had mentioned, that initially they would be allowed to do the apartment units here and then 100 dwelling units on this access. So there'd be 2 accesses there. Once they got to that point, yes, you're right, they'd have to have the second connection. But they're nowhere near applying for a tentative plan of subdivision this year. The services right now stop at Robert Scott Drive. So those services have to be extended down to the property to even start their construction process. So this is a long-term plan. This isn't something that's going to happen right away. And I don't know exactly.
So the development of the rest of the first phase and the second phase is not going to happen until Aramco started their phase on this side.
Yeah,
and the third phase, I understand that. So
Yeah.
so we're not going to be given permits until the second exit after the 2 apartment buildings.
Mhm.
We're not going to give any permits alongside that first phase until the second exit is
So
on.
they can do the apartment buildings and they can do 100 dwelling units back
Yes.
here.
Yes.
So once they get to there, they have to stop if Armco hasn't gotten that second access out. But they
Okay.
could also have it built to here and then go out here for the second access as well, right?
Yeah, as long as they have second access,
As long
I
as they
no
have a
problem.
second access. And you're right, this area here isn't going to be developed for a long time. I mean, the development agreement, as long as they start it within the time period, they have 30 years to build it all out. Armco has 25 years, so we've given them an extra 5 years because we know that this is at the very end of their development time period, and we have to give them time to then.
Yeah, that
allow
was my
them.
second question. There's not gonna be a bridge over the brook to connect phase 2 and phase 3?
No, just a pedestrian.
But yeah, okay. And one more question about streetlights. Do we have any policy for streetlights? How many building or how many unit have to be to trigger a streetlight?
Through you, Madam Warden, we do have a street lighting policy, and they would have to meet whatever municipal standards.
No, I mean the traffic light, sorry.
Oh, traffic
The
lights.
traffic light, sorry.
Traffic lights, the traffic impact study said it wasn't warranted, and all they need is the turning lane into the development. And the Armco one here has a turning lane as well, so there'll be a turning lane into the development.
So we're gonna have like 4,000 units without streetlights. And now we're having like 100 units on one street and they want the municipality to put streetlights. That's my question. So if there's supposed to be streetlights, I think they should be
Traffic
addressed right now.
Traffic lights,
Traffic lights, yes.
not street lights.
Oh, traffic lights, sorry, yeah. Like I know it's costly for the municipality and we have already some areas they're asking for traffic lights and not even 1% of this development. So I think we should be looking at that too.
Under the traffic impact analysis, it wasn't required, only the northbound turning lane was required. And Nova Scotia Public Works, Highway 2 is their road, and they accepted the study and they accepted the northbound turning lane as the solution for turning into that development. So they didn't, neither one of them mentioned a requirement for traffic lights.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Thank you, Madam Warden. I would also add that as part of Armco's traffic impact study, they actually have to build a traffic circle at their
Yes.
first entrance. So that's, an alternative to signalization.
No, that makes sense because like we haven't, sorry, can I? Sorry.
I'm trying, sorry.
Yeah, we already have problem in Enfield and it's way smaller than what we see in here. And we don't want anybody to get hurt, but roundabout, I think
Yeah.
we'll do a good job. Thank you.
Counselor Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to staff, looking at the diagram, no, that one you just had is good. If the services from Robert Scott Drive were extended up to the FH development property, couldn't they start developing before Armco if Armco wasn't ready to go?
Yes, technically they could start developing prior to Armco. Armco does have a tentative plan of subdivision approval for the initial phase of their development, but technically, if they have the services available to them and the development agreement's passed, then yes, they could.
Thank you.
Does any other counselor have any questions at this time? Seeing none, I would now ask if the applicant has any comments or would like to make a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Warden. My name's Darren Shoup. I'm Senior Planner with Brighter Community Development, speaking on behalf of the applicant and our design team. Given the comprehensive nature of staff's report, what we prepared tonight it doesn't provide any additional information, so I'm going to ask that we not present that. But we are here and available if there's any questions or clarification required from council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now open the floor for comments and questions. If you are viewing the YouTube live stream, you may use the YouTube chat feature, which is being monitored. First, does anyone attending in person have any comments or questions? Please come forward to the mic and state your name and address, please.
Thank you, Madam Warden, councilors, staff, and guests. My name is Perry Mitchell-Moore. I live at 14 Robert Scott Drive. In July of last year, the residents on the lower end of Robert Scott Drive experienced a very traumatic flooding event. I was very surprised to wake up the morning of July 22nd to see about 3 meters of water in my backyard. And I was very interested to try and understand what caused that. And I'm fortunate as much as I have an engineering firm who does that type of work. Earlier today, I circulated an opinion to Walter, my counselor, and I think he's distributed to all counselors. Probably haven't had a chance to review it yet. I'm not here to go through that tonight. I just want to present my conclusions or my opinions in person. If anyone has any questions, I'm available anytime to discuss them. The conclusion of, and okay, so a bit of background. We did a comprehensive hydraulic model incorporating both the Shubenacadie River and the Barneys River watershed.
Does this relate to this application?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It relates to the Barneys River watershed,
Okay, thank
which is, the development is located in the watershed. And it relates to the stormwater drainage system. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But we, just to understand, we did it's just not an opinion. This is backed by science and engineering. What we determined, so on the morning, midday, July 22nd, on the Robert Scott Drive side of the CN rail bed, there was about 16 meters water elevation. On the Shubenacadie River side, there was about 12. So there was about 4 meters water in difference. The event that happened, the rain that happened the 21st and the 22nd, caused the water to back up at the CN railbed culvert. So that was the cause of the flooding that occurred on Robert Scott Drive. So we're talking about the pre-development flooding right now, or pre-development hydrology for the watershed. So that was my one conclusion, is that we're approving, or council is approving a lot of development in the Barneys River watershed, and the current infrastructure, all this development, both the Armco and FH development, has to go through that culvert. It's a 10-foot or 12-foot culvert on the CN railbed. It's just a corrugated steel culvert. All the water has to go through that. In the current state, that culvert doesn't have capacity to discharge the flood that happened in July. If you had asked me in June, or if you had told me in June that my house was going to flood, I would have laughed at you. Because under no circumstances was it even conceivable that we would flood. But now it happened. And what happened? So as I said, we did a model. We looked at the actual rainfall that was measured at Belknap. We carried it all the way from Bridgewater through the Shubenacadie River, Grand Lake, just so I could know myself, because I don't want to live in a floodplain. What we concluded, the environment kind of calls this storm that happened in July a thunder train. The current municipal VSANS, municipal standards are not designed for that type of storm. The current standards are designed for, I think it's a Chicago type distribution. It's a standard numbers used by all municipalities, but it would not have modeled what happened in July. So that's a new type of storm. And it brings me to my next conclusion, is that I reviewed the standards for municipality VSANS, and I don't see any provisions for climate change in those. You're designing things in the future for today's world, but I don't think that anybody would deny that our weather systems are changing. And July was an example of that. We've never seen a rainfall in that format in the history that we've been monitoring rainfall. So my second big ask for the municipality, and I'm not opposed to development, I actually like development, I'm very keen on it, but I don't think the residents in the watershed should be asked to incur flooding because of development that's going upstream. I think it can be done responsibly. I think that the municipality and staff should revisit the standards and include provisions for future climate, not just the climate in the past. And if you look at our neighbor, Halifax Regional, they have more defined guidelines in terms of how you would incorporate climate change into your stormwater management system. So I got two big asks for council, and I've already expressed my opinion through a letter that was circulated today. But I would ask that council vigilantly enforce CN to change the drainage under CN railbed at the outlet at Barneys Brook watershed. I would ask council to instruct staff to reconsider stormwater management plans for these developments and incorporate a consideration for future climate change in those stormwater management plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie?
Through you, Madam Warden, I can touch a little bit more on that. The resident is correct. Right now, it's based on the design for a 100-year flood event, if that's correct, Jesse. And, but the property could be developed as of right, and they would have to be based on a 100-year flood event. This proposal doesn't, it says it has to meet the municipal standards for the stormwater management. So if in the future we change our standards, they would have to meet any new standard as well. So if we do take climate change into consideration, increase the 100-year flood event to a different flood event number, then and change our standards, then the developer would have to design the new stormwater retention ponds to that new standard. So there is no set standard in this development agreement. It actually moves with however our standards change along the way. So if the standards are completely different in 5 years, then they would have to build the stormwater retention ponds to those new standards.
Thank you. Does any other member of the public have any comments or questions?
Good evening. My name's Ryan Dempsey. I'm at 6 Robert Scott Drive. I've been here before during the planning application for the Armco development. That was 2019. I identified that there was stormwater issues. Excuse me. I've been there at 6 Robert Scott. I've been there 19 years, and there's a water course that is on municipal-owned green space adjacent to the property. It's a complex water course. Public Works has a drainage easement there as well, and the upper portion of Robert Scott Drive is the hill. There is a significant amount of water that does drain through the easement. The flooding that we occurred in July, the water was up over my basement windows. I wouldn't be there if I thought that this could have happened. I identified through pictures and a lot of council members in 2019 about the issues with the CN culvert. And since then, we've witnessed that the surface water from Blacksmith's Brook can't handle this, but what's happening further up by Eisner Road, it's Barney's Brook. Barney's Brook intercepts Blacksmith's Brook just ahead of the CN culvert, and the culvert cannot handle the water from the Barney's Brook. And on July 22nd, the water was actually flowing backwards across the number 2. My property would be the home that had about 5 cord of firewood floating around Robert Scott Drive. So I've identified these issues in 2019. I've got concerns I addressed before with the Armco development and this development as well. I'm not extremely opposed to these developments, but my ask is for council to really consider trying to get CN to do something with this culvert. It's in poor condition, and it's very disappointing that I mentioned this before, and I believe it's in the minutes from 2019. These concept plans are nice, but they're always cut off in that bottom right corner, and they don't identify the Shubenacadie River, and they don't identify the rail bed, which is a dam. They're missing a lot that's got to do with wastewater management in the area. I know it's a complex water course, and a lot of it drains from up above in the 14. I'm hoping that through municipal standards and as this develops, that stormwater retention plan is put in place and have some better mitigation. But I'm really asking council to pressure CN to do something with this mess downstream. It's in very poor condition. Also, I don't know how this is all going to work. It's not my area of expertise. But currently, on the lower part of Robert Scott Drive, during a heavy rain event, it's pretty common for us not to have septic service when the lift station fills up. If the power's out, of course, it's worse because I believe we lose the pumps. I know there is something I've seen. There's a plan for some kind of an upgrade. I'm not sure what that includes, but I'm wondering how the septic is actually going to work on the lower part of Robert Scott with all this development. So.
Through Madam Warden, I'd ask the Director of INO, I'm not familiar with the pump stations or lift stations.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, through Madam Warden, the resident is correct. During power outages, there isn't backup power to the closest two lift stations that ultimately Robert Scott flows would fall through, and it's something that's part of the review, and we're looking at overall capacity as the overall capacity study and looking for project opportunities. I don't have an answer of what's next, but other than it's a topic that staff are reviewing of the pre-existing items for which is a different topic than the ARMCO, but we've got to or the FH developments, but we've got to figure out both, to be honest, as part of the servicing. But the development has its servicing plan, so that gets reviewed. But the pre-existing is being looked at in conjunction with that in the capacity review, and we're trying to figure out what the game plan is, which will come into the capital project updates in subsequent years. But that'll come out a little different. It won't come out as part of the development. It'll come through the capital project list on overall infrastructure upgrade requirements, and that's part of like what will be spent through capacity infrastructure charges upgrades. Those funds that we collect, upgrading the system will be drawing from that in a bigger plan. So. That's all I have right now, other than we'll look to, I've got addresses, 6 and 14 Robert Scott Drive that I'm going to look to engage and have some interesting conversations with these folks, hopefully. So that's what I've got right now.
Yeah, anyway, I'm hoping we can address some of this stuff soon, because the lower part of our street is having a lot of septic issues. It's not a new problem, but it seems like it's getting worse. And like I say, I'm hoping there's some consideration to some of this report that's coming too. And Perry's worked hard and collected a lot of data. And I know it is related to this development application. But like I said, I would like to see some of these concept plans include the whole picture of the stormwater mitigation, because currently they're missing them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to speak? Seeing none, I would ask if any member of the public has any questions or comments through the live chat on YouTube. No, nothing there. Okay. Does any member of staff have any final comments? I would now ask the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee to present his committee's recommendation. No. Sorry.
Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council give second reading and approve an application from FH Development Group, Inc. to amend the MPS and LUB by change the land designation and zone of PID 45089-802 to Walker Comprehensive Development District, WCDD, to permit a mixed-use master plan development. And Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council give final consideration and approve entering in a development agreement with FH Development Group, Inc. for lands identified as PID 4508-9802, Highway 2 Milford, to permit a mixed-use master plan development, signed within 1 year of council's approval, and contingent upon council's approval of the MPS and LUB mapping amendments being approved by the Minister of Municipal Affairs. As Chair of PAC, I so move.
Seconded.
Seconded by the Deputy Warden. Councilors. First up, Councilor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So I'm astounded, or I continue to be astounded by the traffic impact analysis that are taking place on these enormous proposed projects. 1,500 units, so with the cost of apartments and not to mention, single dwellings or townhouses or duplexes or everything else, you can pretty much guarantee that's 2-income families that are going to be living in those 1,500 units. That equates to 3,000 vehicles coming in and out of that on that little number 2. And that doesn't include the proposed development next to it or what's going to happen over by the school. It's the same with what happened up on Tyler Street. The new development that's going to happen in Elmsdale. I mean, these traffic, and all they say is, well, you know what, we're gonna put in a left-hand turning lane, or we're gonna put in a right-hand turning lane, and then you're good to go. Add 3,000 cars coming out of that one development. So it's to the point where I'm not even paying one bit of attention to the traffic impact analysis because it's ridiculous that they're going to add all this traffic from all these developments onto that number 2, just routinely. We couldn't get a set of lights at White Road, which was desperately needed. I see it every day when I drive by to school. It will be the same thing. It's the same thing with McMillan. They say, well, you know what, it's not going to impact anything. They won't give us lights. We can't get crosswalks across the number 2, the whole distance of the corridor. It's fascinating to me how it works. And I guess I'm still relatively new, but I certainly question it. And, maybe I'm the only one because I feel like a fish out of water here sometimes. I look at this development and what the turning point for me is 6-story apartment buildings. And I just think 6-story apartment buildings is too much. We're a stone's throw away from farmland here, and we're going to put 6-story apartment buildings there. I'm concerned about the flooding that's going downhill, obviously, to Robert Scott Drive, and I know that they are responsible for mitigating all that, but I mentioned it last week, and it is on my mind about this. I've thought about this all week, and the 6-story apartment buildings is I just don't envision that for along there. So for that reason, I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Councilor Rhino.
Yeah, thank you. And I hear what my counselor to my right is saying, and I tend to agree with a combination of all of the developments that has been proposed for along that number 2. Like, there has to be changes, but I understand that Debbie said that there is a study going along, and hopefully that will mitigate some of that. I guess a question through you to Debbie or John or whatever is, with the storm plan with this development, does not it require a plan that will not create any more harm or cause more flooding in that area with a slow release and retention ponds or whatever? Is that not a fact?
To you, Madam Warden, that's correct. So any stormwater management plan is supposed to balance pre and post flow so that there is no impact downstream. Now, that doesn't fix existing issues. Like, that won't fix the issue of water backing up under the CN rail line. Only a new culvert would fix that issue. But it's not supposed to make things worse. Now, that's at a 100-year flood event. The flood waters we had this summer was way beyond a 100-year flood event. So if that was the case, I'm not quite sure what kind of impact that would have. But as I said before, municipal standards can be changed to have a 1 in 200 flood event or something like that. It's something the council can consider down the road. But you're correct that they're supposed to balance pre and post flows.
Okay. I got it. Yep.
Okay.
I got the fact in. Now, my question is, how do we regulate that? How do we police that? What are the standards we're going to go by to say, is it making it worse or not?
Through Madam Warden, so
with every tentative plan of subdivision that comes in, comes a stormwater management plan. And the stormwater management plan has to be in accordance with our municipal standards. So those retention ponds and stuff have to be built in accordance with the municipal standards. Our engineers, they don't approve the plans, but they will review the plans to see if there's anything that it's.
I guess my question is, how are we going to, or do we diligently go out and watch or keep a watch over these developments on where they go, like down there heading across into that CN thing? How do we know that, what's the parameter that it's making things worse down there? I guess that's my question.
And that's more of a question probably for the engineering department, just to understand their process for what happens after things are built, how do they.
I guess what I'm saying is that we can say this, oh yeah, I can't make it worse. But if there are no standards in which to measure that, then how do we know?
Jesse?
Through Madam Warden. So in today's world, we rely on our documented municipal standards, which are continuously updated over time. And there's always opportunity to improve them based on new information as it comes available. So in what a outside consultant will do is they will refer to the standards and requirements the municipality sets forth in our standards, and they will use their professional professional expertise to design within those standards that have been set out, and they are professionally regulated and they stamp. Now, that's what the municipality has chosen to lean on and will continue to lean on. That's still best practice, as other municipal units do as well. And there's a motion on the books for an update on stormwater history and principles, and what council chooses to do with that could answer some other things, because there's some gray here on, there's a few topics going on here. One is the balancing of pre and post flows. One is the pre-existing challenges of Robert Scott Drive, really highlighted by the very unique and historic events of July 2023. And then what other things do you do? So balancing pre and post flows, which one of our presenters really made some great comments. So our current municipal standards balance pre and post flows, but they don't project out climate change factors, which is an opportunity I think we've got to go after on updating those, because that will help, and that's where you catch subsequent phases and get in front of, balancing pre and post flows. If we use today's standards 30 years from now, that's not going to be sufficient. So we're going to have to keep up with those, and we're going to have to adapt our municipal standards and improve them. And projecting out things like the July 2023 floods is an opportunity that we need to get to, because that hasn't happened. But now it hadn't happened before, but now it has. So it's a new benchmark, and we've got to adapt to that. So there is an opportunity and a need, I would say, to relook at those standards on face value of a design concept. There's gates in these to catch that throughout, so we're going to catch them every time and be able to update through subsequent phases and approvals. And I think that's still a reasonable approach. And then, what does the municipality do to go further for further information? We have our existing stormwater policy that I will talk to at a high level, because we're going to have a detailed conversation about this, hopefully in February. But what do you do beyond? beyond the balancing. So whatever we're going to adjust municipal standards and continually improve them, and that should address future development. But what do we do about pre-existing challenges is another topic that is a more complex debate. And so I've gone beyond your question, and I apologize for that. It's just a complex topic.
Well, Jesse, with all due respect, you feel you've gone beyond. I don't think you've answered, in my mind, I don't think you've answered it, but I will take your explanation as it is, but I will look forward to that because really, from what I'm hearing, we don't have a policing issue to police if it's worse or better, really, to me, right now. We have standards we go by that they're drawn up, but we really don't have a policing issue of if it's worse or not. So, I really do appreciate your explanation.
I think I understand what Councillor Rhino means. If a resident comes and says, my house never flooded before that development, what do we have to measure that against? Is it up to the individual resident to prove that this huge development made it worse? I think that's kind of what he's saying.
That's basically it in a nutshell, and I thank you, Madam Warden, for that. So anyway, I look forward to further discussions down the road. I am in favor of this proposal right now, but I really hope that we're diligent in policing that it doesn't create worse stormwater effects down the road. Thank you. I don't need to answer that.
Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, I voted against this amended proposal in committee, but I'm going to do a switch. I am going to vote for it because number one, there's already a development approved there. And, based on what I've read, the reports and the information I've got from staff, I don't think, I believe that the development is not going to materially affect the flooding. And I've read the Griffin 128-page traffic impact study, and I know this is all considered and being built out 30 years. Like, it's not going to all happen tomorrow and bang, we've got flooding problems. But I'm glad these folks showed up here tonight and explained what their situation is, because they are concerned that this development could impact them, and I hope that council and staff are hearing and understanding what they're saying happened to them, what they've seen, and the information that Mr. Mitchell more provided about the difference between the level of water on the river side of the tracks and their side of the tracks, and what his opinion is on the cause of flooding. They are aware that we've written to CN 6 months ago to check their capacity of their culverts and public works, and nobody's responded, not even a response. I don't know what the public think of that, but it's not good service, it's not good communication. I won't get into it because you're coming back with this study on what's been done in the past as far as storm drainage. And from what I can read from the CBCL report in 2013, only a partial study was done. It was only dealt with flooding at the rivers, the two rivers. It didn't deal with issues with culverts, drains, these small brooks and that sort of thing. And that's what's needed, like Barney's Brook and whatever else this other brook is near their property is a factor for them. It impacts their flooding. As far as FH developments, I've never laid eyes on these two gentlemen before, but based on what they're doing with Pine Hill and trying to mitigate flooding there, I'm satisfied that they're gonna do their best not to mitigate, or not to cause extra damage to other surrounding properties in this development. I don't want to say any more. I just hope we can get on with putting the pressure on CN and Public Works and get some kind of a flood mitigation plan and get on with this. That's it.
Any other questions or comments from councillors? The question has been called. And the motion has passed by a vote of 9-1, with Councillor Garden Cole voting nay. Okay, that concludes tonight's public hearings. Thank you for attending. It's been a long evening. We have councillors. We don't have a lot left on our agenda, business from councillors and the warden's report. I know we're past the hour of adjournment, but I'm going to allow you, if you're agreeable, a 10-minute recess, because I think some folks have probably like to use the facilities.
I'm one of them.
business from councilors, and the warden's report is all that's left on the agenda. I'm making an assumption that nobody wants to come back tomorrow night to do those. So in that vein, I would ask folks, you know, if you have anything urgent in business from councilors that requires motions and that, by all means, but we'll try and move as quickly as we can through that this evening. So I would turn the chair over to a deputy warden and present my warden's report, which is very short.
Go ahead, Warden.
Well, I did have another discussion on January the 9th with Mr. Gary Adams from CCRCE on busing. I accomplished exactly as much as we accomplished when he came here and met with some of us, and I will leave it at that. I attended the directors' meetings January 15th and 22nd via Zoom, and I'd just like to take a quick opportunity to tell folks that the Rawdon District Volunteer Fire Department's having their winter carnival February 2nd to 4th, and that the MLA and myself, and I don't know who else, will be involved Friday evening at the intermission of the ham and turkey roll in a Jell-O eating contest. Anyway, and that's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for the Warden?
You like Jell-O?
Depends on what kind it is. There was a chance it was going to be blueberry pie, but I'm told it's Jell-O.
Green Jell-O.
I like green Jell-O.
Seeing nothing, I'll turn the chair back to you, Warden.
Thank you. So we'll start with Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, nothing to report. The only thing I will say is my father-in-law in New Zealand is turning 90 in March, so my wife and I are going on February the 12th, and we'll be away till March the 19th. I'm sorry it's so long, but it's a bloody long way to go when you just don't go for 2 weeks. I'm willing to join in meetings virtually if that's acceptable, and I can certainly stay in contact with residents by email.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Musa.
Nothing to report, Madam Warden. I just give him permission to go.
Deputy Warden.
I don't have anything to report, but hearing that Councillor Tingley's leaving on the 12th, don't forget to leave my birthday present nights on the 12th.
Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Warden. Yeah, just been very quiet. One thing I'd like to mention is the heydays. It's just over 5 months till the 1st of July when heydays occur. So if anybody's still watching this from District 4, there's a meeting on the 5th of February at 7 p.m. at the 810s room, which is the facilities next to the Violet Rose shop, which is just across from the Cenotaph. So we're looking for some new people and some new ideas, hopefully, for that. And another issue that we've risen in Shubby is, much as the wardens, it's busing children to the Shubenacadie District School, crosswalks, which is another issue we hear of, and just busing in general. And the other issue is we've got streetlights that are approved, but we're still waiting for NSP. I don't think there's any update on that probably, so hopefully NSP will get those hooked up eventually. Thank you.
Councillor Hebb.
Nothing at this time, Warden, thank you.
Councillor Eisner.
Oh, thank you, Warden. Just like to say I had coffee down at the coffee shop in Enfield and got to meet our dog handler, which I never knew we had one. And it's one of 4 in the province, and he lives in East Hants. It's kind of neat to see. That's all he does. But he looks like military, but he does pack equipment. Anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just a few items. The Personnel Committee of the Colchester Detail Regional Library, we met, and I'm pleased to announce that we have a new Executive Director and Chief Librarian, Jeff Mercer, who has accepted the position. He'll be starting on the 20th. And I publicly want to thank Tracy Dixon and the municipality for her services. She provided a great bit of knowledge and experience to the committee, the recruitment committee, the equity and community well-being committee met, and we're looking at terms of reference and trying to follow the mandate of the NSFM. I did the Canadian Municipal Barometer Survey, and the Sportsplex next meeting is on Monday, June the 29th. There's a stop sign missing on the intersection of Elmwood and Hemlock, and a resident is wondering where it went. And that's all. Thank you.
Counselor? Counselor Gordon Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Nothing pressing from District 1 at this time. Thank you.
Counselor Rhino.
Just one question through you to Jesse. Have we got any updates on the light for South Maitland?
Go ahead, Jesse.
After 2 years going on.
Through Madam Warden, so we're, I haven't talked to staff this week about it. Last week, we're at the point where we received an update that from Nova Scotia Power, they left a message that said that they were out and did some work, but we haven't been able to get a response back as to what they've done. And, the team was going to go out and site validate this week. I haven't heard back from them yet. If the secondary wiring isn't in place, then we would be following up and proceeding. Now, I did hear that there was a Nova Scotia Power truck out on site, which is promising, but we're looking to validate that first. More to come.
There was one there. I got so excited, drove down after dark there at night, and it's still dark.
Yeah.
So I was very disappointed. So I got my hopes up for nothing, and it's been 2 years, and people are saying this is ridiculous. And it's not our fault, really. It's Nova Scotia Power, but the more pressure we can put on them would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And that concludes business from counselors. So I would be looking for, that concludes our agenda. So I would be looking to set the date and time of the next council meetings. February 20th, 2024, regular meeting of council for policy and in camera, and February 28th, 2024, regular meeting of council. Moved by Councillor Rhino, seconded by Councillor Musa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is carried. We are adjourned. We'll let staff conclude our live stream. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen.